Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's Midweek Geek. I am, as you know, the old geek, and I am joined tonight in order of their arrival because they're all lurking in the back room when I arrive. First person to turn up would have been Mage's Musings because he was furthest to the left. So hello, Mage.
Hello.
And then we have Saxius coming back this week. Hello, Saxius.
Hello.
And Elfbait.
Hey.
Hello, Elfbait. So what time did you log in, Elfbait? Because you were the last of the three.
Which is funny because I was here like 15 minutes to the hour.
So the other two were really, really early. I turned up with about 7 or 8 minutes to go and found the three of them lurking.
Yeah, oddly enough, I can't see anybody else who's waiting, so it's not like the waiting room shows me anything.
I had logged in to set up the simul stream, and then I just left it logged in. I wasn't sure if it would cancel it if I logged out, so I just left it logged in.
It does not, because I am still showing simulcasting.
Well, okay then.
Okay. Hello to chat. Hello, Halakar. Hello, Slan. Hello, Ian. And good to see people commenting from multiple channels. That means you are sharing the love. Hello, Daniel. We are simultaneously streaming this at Mage's Musings and at Elfbait, those two channels, as well as my own. So get that love and smear it over the internet. Share it around. But you're welcome to watch from whichever one you want, whoever's your favourite. We don't get jealous here, do we? Oh.
No, not at all. No jealousy here.
Yeah, only the whims
Hello,
of the
Hungar.
evil archmage.
Sorry, say that again?
The evil of a demi-lich, evil whims of a demi-lich.
I
I said archmage accidentally because my brain is a scrambled egg. But
So before we start, we're going to talk about what we've been up to over the last week. Because Saxius, you've been too busy to run Shadow of the Demon Lords. You're having to put it on a pause, aren't you, now because of work? It's well, congratulations on your likely promotion. Anyhow,
it's not
it seems somewhat forced on you.
I've not been promoted. It's the opportunity's there, so I'm going to go for it. But
you've been doing the job of manager, haven't you? For
pretty much, I've had to step in.
Yeah. So, and if you've stepped in and you've been the number 2 for a while, then I'd say the opportunity's more than there, isn't it? So Shadow of the Demon Lords didn't happen, so I started Call of Cthulhu campaign, running the Blood Red Fez. We created some characters and we got started. We got that done in time to play about an hour and a half of the campaign. And already we've had some failed sanity checks and some critical rolls and some critical failures, and it's been good fun. Can't play this week though because we've got a rescheduled football match I'm going to tomorrow night. Saturday, played some MERP. Had a really good session of MERP. Really, really good session of MERP on Saturday. They are starting to realise the depths to which Cardalan has fallen. How the Dunedain Cardalan princes are all pretty much in it for themselves. And they're going to have to try and get them working together, which might not be the easiest thing. And Monday we went back to Dragon Lord's game, and things are ticking over nicely now. So that's what happened, and I have something new which will be starting on Friday. I decided to pick up a copy of that. That is a game book.
Nice. Looks thick.
Yeah. Look at the name of the artist. That's going to cause some guffaws. It's going to cause some guffaws.
So that it didn't end up being one of the Nicholson ones, then, did it?
No, sadly not. But the art style is very, very similar. You say it looks thick?
Yeah. Because I know that Nicholson did do their version of Beowulf, their game book for Beowulf.
Yeah, I was tempted by that. But that's a conversion of the vampire story. You can play as any one of 3 different vampire hunters, or you can play as Dracula himself. But that's a typical fighting fantasy book. There's the difference in thickness.
Good Lord.
It's over 600 pages and over 1,000 entries.
Can you imagine trying to write something like that?
Yes. Yeah. It's basically fighting fantasy rules with a few new stats and a lot of extra routes through it, and the chance to play lots of different characters. So that's pretty good. Pretty good. We'll try that. We'll try that out on Friday. Ennio, what have you been up? We'll go around in the same order. Sean, what have you been up to?
Just the usual. We played first edition on Saturday. Since we had one of the regulars out, the group decided to continue building their alternate characters. So they've got a nice little stable of characters building. Fought some troglodytes, then got a big loot, and then ran away to enjoy the spoils of their victory, as one does in first edition. Rather than continuing on the quest, they're like, "Hey, no, we're rich. Let's go back to where we're safe." It was very funny. And some OSE last night, the one game I'm playing and not running. Much the same. We we got some loot and we're like, okay, let's no, we got some. We were gonna back out, but then it came late and we decided just to freeze. So we got to pick up where we left off the next time we play.
Cool. And you've been making videos as well.
Right.
Got a short on the Find Familiar spell and the next step of the Evil campaign, which was rather glorious. Lots and lots of death involved.
That was a fun one for sure. They went in with their small army and learned that you don't underestimate rangers.
Well, he got his OSE one out too. I saw that.
Yeah, I got an OSE one to conclude where they finally got home. So shifting gears, I'm only 7 episodes behind for OSE, but I figure I'm 2 episodes behind of Night Below. So if I catch up with that, then I'll focus on OSE again.
Yeah,
I like the fact that your evil group is using zombie versions of dead NPCs and player characters.
Yes, that's a good way of playing evil. I've done that with an evil character before. It's always amusing.
Are you evil or are you just environmentally conscious? Like you're just recycling.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Zombie Ranchifus, yes, I spotted
And
him.
Zombie Bob.
And
Zombie Bob, yes.
Well, what's funny is Bob was killed by a bear, and Zombie Bob was killed by a werebear.
Well, you have to level up the bearness to take out the zombie version. Because D&D zombies are pretty hefty compared to your typical flesh eater.
Sorry, D&D which?
D&D zombies.
Yeah, well, they're 2 hit dice, average 9 to 10 hit points, so you get a couple of them, and then they form a nice little.
They can take a couple of blows. They do a good solid D8 damage, and they don't run away. They're just a bit slow. Just to say hello to everyone else who's joined us. Sorry to hear you're back in the hospital, Hungar. That's shitty as always. It's your second home, unfortunately. Hello, Mike. We've got Justin here. We've got Bear. Hello, Bear. Hello, Echo. And that's everybody's chimed in so far. Saxis, you haven't done much gaming recently, have you? Hello, Michael.
I mean, I've done over the weekends. That's the main ones that I've been doing.
Yeah.
So my Saturday group has finally, after dragging their heels and with me, well, unbeknownst to them, more or less lining up for losing my patience and having every single enemy NPC jump them in their home. They finally went on and have set up the stage for the grand showdown between the armies of the Bullywugs, who have shown up in about 100 or so numbers. About a warband of Kuotoas have shown up, and they've emptied out their magical chambers, so they've come decked to the nines for this fight. And a warband of Drow have also showed up, so they're about to witness the epic clash between evil versus evil versus evil, and just see how that plays out. The map I made for it is littered with both visible and invisible tokens. So I'm going to have a joy of basically turning around to the players and saying, right, you now roll for them. Because you just want to watch, well, I'm going to keep you active.
Oh,
And
Beeve, you're new. Hello, Beeve. You've been watching our videos and doing so silently by the looks of things. I don't remember you commenting before, but welcome to the stream.
and yeah, outside that, I got to play in a one shot where we were playing in Warhammer 40,000 as the Imperial Guard, and I got to be the sergeant. And I think I was the only survivor at the end of the entire thing. Basically, fantasy, combat, soldiers. Yeah, like it's brutal. So I got to play in that, and we witnessed a lot of deaths and dismemberment, and lot like the casualties was just insane with how we went through that. So that was fun.
Good game. Well, you always want a bit of death and dismemberment.
Yes.
I managed a bit of that. Only it was to an NPC in the Blood Red Fairs. Started off in a pretty gory fashion, just to set the tone. And Elfbait, what have you been up to?
The only gaming I've gotten into really recently has been in Saxius's Sunday game.
Of course, you're playing in that.
Yeah, where we had our first session. We arrived at the fort. We met the staff that runs the fort. A pretty strapping older gent of a half elf runs the fort, and then we were given our barracks and did some kind of back and forth role play between our characters to try and get to know each other. It was pretty cool, actually. We found out a little bit about what our first little adventure hook was. There's a local lighthouse that's been taken over by some traders from the fort who have been working with some pirates. And we went there, and then we got sidetracked by a bunch of ghouls fighting mermen. That was a weird encounter, but it was cool. I'm like, were the mermen just like sunning themselves on the beach like merfolk are wont to do, and the ghouls are like looking at them from the woods and just charged in, or what? But either way, we ended up fighting in the surf with the ghouls, and that was fun.
I was hoping for a moment there you were going to say that these strange fishmen emerged from the sea while you were in the lighthouse. And then I'd have known that Saxius had been getting inspiration from Call of Cthulhu's The Lightless Beacon, which takes place in a lighthouse. But,
no, but it was cool. We did a lot. The group it's fun as a play. If I seem a little overhyped, just because I don't get to play that often, and I had a good time. But the group was really cool in that, like, we strategized a lot, and we have different experience levels. And although it is weird being in this group, because when we went around the table and did how long you've been playing, and I told them how long I've been playing, and I've got a combination of an oh damn and a genuine wow, and I'd never felt older. Like, should I just go grab my cane?
Oh damn.
Yeah, like an oh damn and a wow.
It was a good game. Everyone cooperated. Everyone worked together. You communicated, and you asked for a map about the lighthouse that you were going to. So that was already a big plus.
I made Saxius scribble on the fly. I'm like, asked the head of the fort. I'm like, do you happen to have a map of the lighthouse that we're going to? And the rest of the party's like, oh yeah, a map. What's so funny though is I have to apologize for my character being overly picky about the latrine situation at the fort. When we get there and we're told if you have to go to the bathroom, go outside the walls. I'm like, no, we'll be digging latrines. I'm an old mercenary. Well, not an old mercenary. I'm only second level, but been out in the field. I've fought. I know that this is not safe to have to wander outside of a fortification to go to the bathroom, especially in the wilderness. We're literally perched on the edge of the wilds. So.
Well, yeah. and in doing so, you destroyed one of Saxius's quick plot hooks where somebody gets attacked while going out.
I'm sure he'll have something crawl up out of our toilet, but.
No, well, you did ask. Like, it was revealed that the traitors, one of the things that they did was they sabotaged the latrines before they more or less like got out of there. So
I may have missed that part.
Oh fuck!
Just to say hello to a few more people who've joined. Crafting Gamers joined us, Squirrel Hermit, and Nosorian. So it's nice to see a good gang of people here for this this chat tonight. This is one of Saxius's topics. In fact, it's two combined topics that Saxius came up with. I thought I'd combine the two together, and we'll talk about creating magic. And we know that magic is created at the table whenever we play, don't we? Because we are magical souls. But I mean, creating magic in terms of coming up with your own spells, allowing players to come up with their own spells, and creating magic items, whether on the DM's end, creating new magic items, or allowing players to create their own magic items, or whatever we want to talk about on this sort of topic. Saxius, you came up with these ideas, so I think it's only fair that we unleash you first.
Sure. I mean, it really just basically boils down to it starts more or less when you start reaching level 9, level 10, when you become a named character, and at least in the AD&D rules, this is when you can start, making potions, you can start making scrolls, the ability of crafting items out of magic is now on the table. And usually if the wizard at around that level starts looking into enchantment as additional spells, that's where you're going to start seeing, the players are going to start, trying to manufacture their own benefits of their own magical items. Or at the very least, they're going to start going like, how do we actually do this? These questions are going to start being propped up because they're now going to be having a much higher level engagement through the game. So for me, it basically boils down to when it comes to them making their own spells, the first things I tackle is mechanics, because that's the crux of anything. What are you trying to achieve? What I then try to more or less find out, what is it equivalent to, and then I get a rough idea of what spell level it's from there, and then we build from there. The pluses, the minuses, if it goes up and down in spell slots, and so forth. And then there's going to be a cost associated with that, as well as time. And now we're looking into the process of which the players are going to have to invest and almost have their own little side quest to go out and generate and create new spells. And equally so, if they want to create a magical item, well, that's now also going to be a big thing.
Hungar's already preempted what I was going to say on this initial topic.
Mm-hmm.
Halakar, you mean?
Halakar, sorry.
Yeah.
Crafting magic items in first edition was harsh. There was a lot of wish and permanency spells involved, and the drawbacks from casting them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There are.
There's a reason why first edition magic users would find potions of longevity a useful prize.
Or you can go out and attempt to make those. But the point being that, yes, it was a lot of things. But then also ask yourself, what are you going to do when the player suddenly turns around and goes, well, I don't want to lose the Constitution saves, so what if I sacrifice someone else's?
I never thought of that.
Totally valid for evil characters.
Either that, or they can always try to up the level of the spell or whatever to do away with some of the,
but
let's complicate the production to counter some of the drawbacks.
Yeah, or just go out and get more exotic items. Something that's a little bit more, be more than just the feathers of a griffin, the blood of a hydra. It's no, let's go out and get some hard stuff like.
If you needed the soul of somebody, and my players were like, "Well, we're gonna go catch a ghost," I'd be all right, cool.
Exactly.
Find a way to catch a ghost.
Find a ghost. Let's get the central eye of a beholder. I mean, there are many ways for you to, as a DM, to say, "I will allow you to circumvent the methods of a permanent thing, but we're gonna be doing some bargaining here because you will sign the dotted line with some blood."
Well, this is the bit I like about the whole process, in that you can drop in. I will say now, I don't adhere completely to the levels regarding brewing potions. I have a number of times in recent games had magic using characters find recipes.
Yeah.
And if they have access to the recipe and they can find the ingredients, then they can start thinking about brewing things, or taking the stuff to somebody who can do the brewing for them.
But John, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There is not
Yeah.
just
Cat
one
skins aren't very
recipe.
useful in Magic, but
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Displacer Beast is a very useful piece of fur.
it looks
Yeah,
like
of
a
course.
cat, but it's not a cat.
Well, it's the material in secondary, at least. It's the material component of displaced self.
That is true.
My point is like there are many ways that we can go about this, but the key part is that there are ways forward towards this, and without us even going towards permanency and wish spells, just look at the expendable magic wands, for example. Once you start being able to generate just a simple wand, 10 to 20 uses of having something that you can cast as you go along, wonderful stuff. Now that is going to be great for the players as they move along. What's up? Oh, sorry, I thought you were about to say something there, Geek.
Oh no! Do I look like I'm about to say something?
No, you're just like, oh, you're treading on something dangerous there. Sax.
No,
Yes,
no,
you
no,
gotta be careful. No.
that's my
My point. But my point is like,
yeah,
you're pondering. But my point is like, before we go into like the permanent one, just look at like what are the expendable ones, and then they might be able to ask like, well, can we recharge it? It's like, well, do you want to put in the steps of being able to recharge? It's like, yeah, we would really like that. All right, are we going to now have once a week? Are we going to have once a month? Or is it going to be once every day? Because now we're going to start upping the scale from there, and you can already see how much bargaining I do with my players with this. Because my Saturday group I have not forced them, but I have a player who understands what kind of a person I am. So he has been cataloging every single magical property that they have gotten a hold of for the 2.5 years that we've been playing, from Hydra Blood to they still have an unhatched hippogriff egg. They have got a couple of
Makes
teeth.
a great omelet.
Fantastic one.
Do these things have best before dates?
Well, yeah, they do, but that's we'll get to that later. But we also have the teeth of a silver dragon, or the skeleton of a skeleton teeth of a silver dragon that they got a hold of, and a couple of other things that they've whisked away. Feathers from a rock as well as his blood. So they've got a number of rather exotic things whisked away for them to use, and these are the sort of things that they then have to expend when it comes to them generating magical items. But this is sort of like where I came from when it comes to this topic, making magical items, making new spells. Because at this point, once you hit level 9, level 10, the players might turn around and say like, well, I really want a spell in my book for the latest level that I have. But rather than, let's say, having to go a level and learn it, or going out adventuring, why not just research it? Why not just create it? Why not take something else and go like, well, I like the idea of a fireball, and I don't want to just change the aesthetic of making it into an ice ball. Why can't I just do X, Y, and Z and change the property of an existing spell, and then it goes up and down in the spell slot that it requires?
I mean, I'm going to ask one question now, though. So, have any of you here played a mage and made a new spell with that mage? And if so, how did you go about it? How did you approach your DM?
But it's been a while. So
Only the once. I had it laid out. This was like 20 years ago. Somebody else was DMing. I had the spell laid out, and then the character died, so I never got to make it. But the DM had approved it.
I mean, I was playing mine. Go on, Saxius. You dive in.
I was following through the process of a game where the mage, not me, but like another player, basically went through and they wanted to do teleport without error. However, they wanted to basically create platforms that they could then build around the world, so that they could basically gate or pop around pre-designated locations, as long as they
circles.
Basically teleport circles, yeah. But they wanted that to become a concrete spell, and they then wanted to be able to then know that they could create that using X amount of components, X amount of value, so that they could then teleport around to certain areas. And then it became a big discussion of like, well, what if someone puts a barrel in that area? Are you then going to have system shock, or die from having half of your feet inside the barrel? How is this going to work? And then, yeah.
My necromancer. I made a cantrip. It's a 5th edition character, so it was a cantrip. It was something that could be pretty much freely cast, and he was a bit of an asshole, to be honest. Low charisma, thought too much of himself, talked over people, considered himself to be the boss of the group, and just generally sort of put his nose in. Desirable, and so I created. His name was Ferdinand, and I created this the cantrip Ferdinand's frustrating filibuster. And all it would do is when somebody was talking and trying to persuade, influence somebody in any way, he would start talking over the top of them, and it would give them disadvantage on any skill checks they would make when trying to influence people. Because he'd had this cranky old nerdy magic user going, well, actually, over them all the time. And
would you need a spell for that one? Just wouldn't a low charisma suffice?
Well, it was giving other people. It was giving other people disadvantage. So that was the idea. And the DM was just like, that just so fits your character. You can have that. you can do that. It's because it was just. Thematically, it fitted everything that he was like. So,
yeah, I haven't made one myself within memory. Not a spell. I know my wife in our game wanted to make continual use versions of one of the runic abilities of her Rune Knight character in 5th edition, and so. That was a pretty easy one. I just kind of defaulted to some of the standard item creation rules that are in 5th edition, and it worked out really well. It's not overpowering. It's still like a one charge a day kind of a use, but now she doesn't have to refresh it every morning. So, because inevitably it was like she'd get up in the morning, all right, you get a rune, you get a rune, you get a rune. And so as she's been traveling, she's been crafting these runes during downtime and stuff. And they're just, it's a cloud rune. It effectively allows you to once every day, you can transfer a hit on one creature to another creature. So it saved their life so many times. Like, oh, you're about ready to get smashed by the 5d8 damage from the whatever. Cloud rune. Well, crap. And who are you going to redirect it onto? Himself. It's like...
That's quite powerful then. That's quite a powerful spell.
So clearly for 5e, that would be a cantrip.
No, it's not. No. But it's actually, I hadn't, you have to know your group, because for me, I had really no big problem making that something that she could make, because they're horrible at remembering their magic items. And I don't remind them very often. Like, my wife has for the longest time had this sword that allows her to do mirror image and a blink, and she never uses it.
Say Hyrax, with the existence of counterspell as a 3rd level spell, I had to make it a lot less powerful. So it couldn't disrupt other spellcasters if it was just going to be a cantrip. It would only be when somebody was giving a speech and trying to influence people, or when there was persuasion going on, we wouldn't believe there might be deception going on, or something like that. Just to make
advantage disadvantage mechanics are really good for low level magic items, even though they're technically a pretty high bonus. I think what the math comes down to like a +5 bonus for advantage.
Yeah, it's more or less a +5, yeah. But still, it's an easy one.
Saxius Nosorian is in there. Yes, he's playing in the OSE games this Saturday, so he's on the Discord.
All right.
What I was going to say. Then the other thing I didn't recharging. Now, try as I might, I could never find any real definitive rules in 1st edition regarding recharging. I always assumed that you would have to cast a spell into the item to give it charges. And that's the way we played it. But of course, during downtime, you'd imagine your character could be casting lots of spells into it on a daily basis.
Well, that's why you give them a limit.
Yeah, my understanding
Yes.
was it was almost the same process of recreating the item, only you didn't need the core materials anymore. But it was still the length of time. You couldn't just cast a spell to recharge it.
Right.
You would have to go through the months long process
Yeah.
to recharge it.
They didn't really spell that out very clearly, did they? Though in the rules,
I think that's one of the things they, at least in early editions, they really wanted to leave up to the DM to fill in his campaign. It's like, because that could also be a quest, you know. Like,
I mean,
this wand can only be recharged if it's bathed in the waters of blah blah blah, and you're like, all right, well, I guess we gotta go find the waters of blah blah blah, and
Just don't use up the wand getting there.
exactly.
I mean, my players have got a rod of lightning bolt, and the recharging for that is that it has to be hit by a lightning strike during a storm. And I've already rolled out the yeah, exactly. And then that they now have to wait for a storm to come around for them to then either get a cleric or someone else to then get a
Druid.
lightning bolt. Yeah, or druids or someone else to basically get the rod to be hit by lightning.
Piss off a blue dragon.
No, all that. I mean, that's
or Bahir.
Go just touch the wand to a Bahir and then make
Good
your
luck.
save.
But the point being is that, like, don't make it easy. Like, another player has got a mask of fear, a war mask of fear, and if he is meant to basically recharge the fear spell that it's been enchanted with, he has to, under a full moon, bathe it in newly acquired milk that has been stirred in with the blood of a person that has not done anything wrong in the last year, and that's what he has to do.
Good
So
for you for being more inclusive and forward thinking instead of just virgin.
No,
haven't done anything wrong in the last few years.
Yeah, like it's just like you've got to find someone who's not been a law breaking citizen for like at least a year, and then like they go get their blood, pour it in here, dip it in there, and then leave it to be bathed in that throughout the night.
I'm just trying to make out Halakar's picture here. He's skydiving there or something, Halakar.
No,
Looks
I
like
think
a rappel maybe.
Bungee jumping.
that looks bungee jumping to me because he's got.
He's got military gear on, so
I think Halakar's idea is quite a good one actually. Little stuff like less, one thing I really,
looks like an Australian rappel.
a bit of 5th edition bashing for me now, in that I don't like the way all their items recharge with 1d3 charges or whatever after each long rest at dawn or whatever. I'd much rather have a limit of charges on the device, and when done, they are done. But unless they can get it recharged.
But 5e is also built upon the premise of it is going to be high magic, ergo they're going to be recharging it like it's lithium batteries.
And it's also predicated on not inconveniencing your players. So
yeah, exactly. But again, like it all depends on like what you say. At the very forefront. This is now going to have limits. This is not going to have limits. You will find the balance as and when. But that's just the core bit that they made.
It was one of the first house rules I made was to get rid of that and to bring in ones that had 15 charges. When done, they're done. That sort of thing.
Yeah. And again, like that's still a valuable magical item that a group can go out and make. And I don't think something like that should be a overly complicated item to make. You need something worthwhile to, like, if it's a wand, worthwhile piece of wood.
I think it depends what it does. I mean, as Halakar says, like a wand of light or wand of magic.
Exactly. Like
if you're making the wand of summoning red dragons, then it should be really tricky.
Right. Come on. I am dealing with. Yes, you are right. By technicality,
I'm dealing with pedants. Yes, we are pedants.
Have you ever met a gamer?
Apparently,
a gamer. Any gamer?
No. But we're definitely wibbly wobbly on this train track. But yes,
it's kind of a Thomas the Tank Engine kind of effect.
It is. But the point is, like, the lower level spells that you would have for like things like Wand of Light, even like hell, I would love the concept of like you've got a wand of dancing light, so you just summon out a bunch of glowing balls, and then you can basically have those like fly around and be your guide. Those are really, that's a useful spell. It's a useful thing you can have as a group. I can see uses of that, and I don't see that being a particularly challenging thing for a level 9 or level 10 wizard for generating. Like, yeah, it might be taking a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, with a little bit of like exotic things, but at that stage I would be expecting the group to have at least some exotic items.
Yeah.
But again, I'm maybe having too high standards for some players.
I like to pepper my campaigns with a lot of low level, almost folk magic too. Stuff that can be made just gathering the right ingredients.
It's got dark in chat. They've got dark. This is the sort of thing you'd have for a Cthulhu campaign.
But I think it's good to be pretty flexible on magic items in their creation in games, because I mean the game setting, even in AD&D, there's lots of magic items around. There's a reason why there's the joke that there's a factory plugging out +1 swords.
I mean, when it comes to even things like that, like I like to bring in my personal house rule, which is not all magical items are created. Not that someone sat down and like imbued it with magic. I often like that if a player starts at level 1 and plays throughout my campaign all the way up until level 5 or level 6 with the exact same weapon, I will automatically bump that up to being a magical item, as in they will immediately get a +1 status. And for that character, for that weapon, there will be a unique quality given to it, because that item now is becoming a part of their legend. And at level 5 and level 6, you are looking at local heroes, local legends. Ergo, that's how I go about it. And that's why I have more or less gone down the route of there is a story behind every magical item. There are very few that are actually produced. The ones who are produced for purpose. And those purposes are usually for specific people, for specific tasks, very niche things. And that's how you then come across like picklocks, who are very great because you can, what's it called? A thief is able to basically whistle and they will appear in their hands. They can be left a mile away from where they were, and they can whistle them into their hands, so they can go into anywhere, simply whistle, and they will appear in their hands, so that they can basically do a easy entry for anything without having to worry about hiding them on their body.
Yeah, there's a good example, even like one of the Critical Role streams, not to necessarily invoke the ire of everybody, but the one character just wanted daggers that would return after throwing them, and so like he's got a couple of daggers that he can throw that come back to him. Is it gonna break the game? No.
It saves him carrying a bandolier with 10 of them around his waist.
Not to mention it's those little things as a DM that you can do to like help a player feel super special and cool, and not really give them too much. It's like back when I used to run 2nd edition.
You're much too kind.
And I would have like the lineage chart that it was lineage is like more not like in the current sense, but it was just a D100 chart of things that made you stick out from the bog standard rules as written. One of the options was a family heirloom, which could be a +1 weapon. Yeah, your first level and you're setting out with a +1 sword. You are not gonna break the game. But now the player has that background and that feel of, hey man, I got the sword, and that character held on to that +1 sword forever because it was a family heirloom. He may have side holstered it, but
but he's not going to just get rid of it.
Exactly.
You mentioned that the plethora of +1 weapons is so ridiculous. You think there's churning them out, but I mean, I think that's easily justified by the fact that we haven't talked about clerics also have the ability to create magic items. And I always imagined it that those weapons were actually churned out en masse by all the various priesthoods who would arm their soldiers and their zealots.
I mean, they're not just relics here.
There's obviously a mix, but see, the thing is,
with a cart of +1 swords. It's a holy relic.
if you're looking strictly by the book, a magic user creating a magic item has to permanency it, and there's a 1 in 20 chance they'll lose a con point. So over time, that's not a feasible long-term thing. Whereas clerics don't have that problem. They have to go through the expense of making the item, but then they have to place it on the altar to have the god imbue it with the abilities. So you figure there's going to be more
alignment then.
It potentially can, yeah, more powerful items, but just the mundane stuff, the mundane magic would have been imbued by the god to give to their warriors for their holy crusades.
Yeah.
And also, that justifies.
You can have, I mean, it could simply be a hammer that was made in dwarven forges, and therefore it's got +1 to its abilities. It might not necessarily have to be magical, but it can just be a really good quality item. You don't have to always frame it as magical. I did like that
in third edition. Well, I think it came in through some of the second edition and even some of the Dragon magazines. But the idea of master crafted weapons were great ways to justify +1 blades
without magic.
Without magic. Yeah, I completely agree to that. And I'm having recently read up on the second edition Drow. I mean, that's what they effectively run around with. They're lowly soldiers. And most of their weapons are +1 to attack and to damage because it's made out of adamantine.
You can even do weird stuff like I did in my campaigns for the longest time, where we had 2 metals in the world that were inherently magical but didn't necessarily give a bonus, but they counted as a magic weapon while striking. So we had Elven Steel, which all Elven Steel in my campaign setting was forged over magical fire because elves, right?
Mm-hmm. And then there was harm undead.
Yeah, or werewolves and stuff like that too. And then I borrowed the name Gromril from Warhammer for the dwarven metal, and it was similar. It was meteoric iron, and it was inherently magical. It did also make them easier to turn into magic items in campaign. But just if you had an elven longsword, you had a magic weapon. It didn't have any bonuses. It was just it could hurt supernatural creatures and stuff. So
I think at one point, go on.
Just want to say I'm just going to do my hello thing. I'll do my polite hello to people who join chat.
Go on.
We've had Tunka Todd pop in, and Dungeon Minister's also popped in, and we've got the where is he up here? The GM's Alcove has popped in to say hello. So. Hello, all these fine people. Anyway, keep going. I just like to be polite to people who join in.
Yes, of course. I ran a Pathfinder 3.5/Pathfinder game about last year, and one of the things that they came across was a magical anvil, but it was specifically built for fire giants. So. Too big for them to use, but the moment that they learned that the anvil was made to help enhance the imbuement of magic into items, reducing the cost and everything that came with it, the players it became a mission of like, how can we get elephants down into this mine so that we can carry out this great anvil? We must acquire this. We will spend every gold. We will empty every crypt, every tomb, so that we can widen out the hole so we can get this one item out there. And that because they just wanted this, because they could just create so much with that. And it was a concept that I quite liked. The idea that there's a magical anvil that can be used to magically imbue that. I liked it so much. I've brought it into my second edition game. There was a storm giant castle that flies around and it's got an anvil exactly like this. Because every so often they get bored and they make magical items, so they then sort of go like, okay, we've now got this. If we ever need to find X, or if we need to do Y.
So that's characters crafting magic items in a game.
Yep.
As a DM, how much do you rely on the magic items that are already there in the books, and how much do you tinker to make your own ones, and what do you do to make sure how do you come up with ideas, and what do you do to make sure they're apt?
What do you mean apt? We don't. Balance is a dirty word around here.
Oh no, I mean, not so much balance,
fitting.
but fitting,
Yeah.
yeah, fitting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Basically, so I do use the core book whenever I just need to sort of like roll something up. However, I often ask myself, what is the story here? And if I roll up something that does not fit in, then I have to make up what is the background of that item, because there's got to be some reason for why this came in to this world. There's got to be a reason behind it. So sometimes I might basically roll up and say, right, stock standard, here is what you get, simple as. Other times I'll say, right, these are not just boots of spider climb. These are boots of spider climb, but you are able to basically just have your feet on there, and you can use your hands so that you can still fight. So then I start basically changing smaller aspects of it. It's not until we get into like really powerful magic or magical items that I start saying, right, now we're gonna go a little bit more bonkers with what can and can't be done. But that's when we start looking at either the equipment of lower to mid-teen heroes that you've acquired, who have all had those items with them for long periods of time, or you're looking at at an item that's been specifically crafted by or imbued by a number of different mages throughout the ages. Each of them, each party that's gotten their hands on, have all added their own additional thing to that item. So to me, it is very much down to what is the purpose of the item, what was it used for, who used it, and what's the story behind it. Because every time they do identify, it's story time. I tell them the story of the item, because that's how I interpret that identification is used for. You get the information of the magic of the item into your head, so you understand what you hold there.
I mean, I don't think I go into quite as much depth as in terms of having a story of the item, but I think I probably should. But I got my initial ideas from the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, the artifacts and relics, those things you roll on for the various powers that the artifacts have. And I think that was one of the things that sort of almost officially gave DMs the green light to say, have fun with these various combinations.
Yeah, I love the artifacts.
I
they're wonderful.
do a lot of custom magic item stuff. I like to even stuff that's relatively common, come up with new ways of doing it. Like, oh, okay, healing potions are one thing. Well, what about such and such tea by such and such people that it heals, but it also does this, or different. A lot of times it's subtly reskinning and stuff. But I hate putting a decent magic item out there that's not named with some sort of history to it. Kind of preemptively because of my players. I mean, honestly, they're gonna ask me what's the history on this. So I gotta just do it ahead of time. But yeah, there's a brew that's available in my campaign setting that it's made by goblins, and if you drink it, it's cool, it'll heal you. But if you're not a goblin, you have to make a save versus poison, or get the poisoned condition for a full day in 5e. Because it was nasty. I even essentially made Red Bull for the game.
Nice.
I'm like, it's a minor herbal thing that removes levels of exhaustion, up to 2 levels of exhaustion, but no more. So it won't keep you from dying. But
when it wears off, do you gain an extra level of exhaustion?
I didn't write it that way, but no.
There are herbs in MERP that do all this sort of thing that you can become addicted to.
That's one of the things I've done a lot of custom work, especially considering playing 5e and using D&D Beyond, where it's got all the stuff that I can just do the homebrew daily stuff real quick. I have a big list of fungus and plants and things like that are just things that the players can find, that they can do one. There's a blossom that if you find it, you can use it quickly in a concoction to get a speak with dead. Right. There's, I've got Wizard's Weed, which actually boosts your spell level for your casting for a bit. It's a special blend that wizards use, and one of my players pinched a bit of it when they last met with their big wizard NPC friend that they always go to for information. They stole some of it, and then they felt a little bit more magically inclined after they smoked it. So
I'm the opposite. I'm like 99.5% just use what's in the book. Occasionally I'll come up with a variation, or I'll use a variation that's in a published module, something like that. But yeah, for the most part, I'm kind of skimpy with the magic that I give out. So it usually has some sort of meaning. There's people find the stuff, and they my group, for example, found a bag of holding, and they were over the moon, but then they realized just how much it was worth. It's like we can't not sell it. It's just too valuable. We need the XP, right? So things like that will come up. The exception is, in my 5th ed game, but even my 5th ed game, it's sort of I created 2 magic items that are available to be found, but they are in relation to my house rules, because I use a house rule that limits cantrips. So I created, for the Harry Potter fans, the Hogwarts wand, which, if it's fully charged, allows you unlimited cantrips, right? So things like that, but very sparingly. I just like what's in the book is good enough for me. But I like sometimes doing what Saxius does, is you imbue it with a backstory. The more powerful the item, the more rare it is, the more it's going to have a good history.
Yeah.
My team once found a +5 broadsword, and this was purely randomly determined. I didn't put it in; it just came up, and when I rolled the charts, and the history was that it was called Triumph, but it was cursed. Anybody wielding the sword would inevitably be challenged, and the last several owners had been killed in duels because somebody challenged them, and it wasn't a real curse. It wasn't something that, I'll roll percentage and you will be challenged. It was just a folklore curse. It was just colorful legend. There was no actual curse on the sword.
That's
but
cool.
they were so afraid to use it, they kept it bound. It's like, we only pull it out if we need it.
Yeah.
Surely they should have used a little bit of logic there and thought, hang on, if somebody's wielding this and it's +5, then it must either be a lie or they were rubbish. Because if you're fighting with a +5 sword, you should win.
At that point, I, as the DM, you would almost ask the player how much of that is metagaming and how much of that is your character.
Mm-hmm. But they were afraid. They were afraid. And they took it seriously because they thought it was a legitimate curse that had been put on the item. So
I do like building magic items that have drawbacks. Yeah, I think
that's why I brought up Michael's comment here. I think the chat have started going down that line now. So I think this is a good thing to discuss.
I had one of my players find a dose of a thing called the Hell Brew, that was essentially a combat drug, effectively, in short terms, for a fantasy setting made out of devil's blood and all 12 herbs and spices, but it gave them temporary hit points. It gave them in 5th edition gave them temporary hit points. It gave them damage resistances, and like a 2-point strength boost, but also caused them to rage out effectively. So they were like having to, they became a great combat monster, but then if they ran out of enemies while they were still under the effect, they'd start attacking the rest of the party.
As B says here, I like putting in negative effects, but they're rarely equal to the positive effects unless there's a point. Unless there's a point to it, yeah. Often be quite minor. As I said, I like the artifacts and relics from 1st edition, especially when they've got often minor drawbacks. Things just as simple as severe body odor and stuff like that. They can just add a bit of, I don't think is flavor the right word? Odor, I think should be but yeah.
I had one of the magical herbs that, like, sure, you can use it, but then you're going to be asleep for a day afterwards. So, because it had a massive soporific effect. It doesn't hurt you, but it pretty much makes the party sit around going, when's he going to come back from Dreamland? Because it gave you a use of divination effectively, but it put you on your ass for a day, like a full day. So
I don't know if Mage, you probably noticed in our OSE game, I like dropping lots of little bits and bobs in that give you not necessarily magic things, but little minor effects here and there, dotted around the dungeon.
Like the river that gives us that bonus hit point.
Yes, yeah. If you get suitably wet in the river while you're wet, you have a bonus temporary hit point.
Mm-hmm.
You found mushrooms that give you a variety of effects, depending on whether you pass or fail the saving throw. I mean, you've already worked out that there's one of the mushrooms does absolutely nothing if you pass the saving throw. If you fail the saving throw, it heals you a hit point. After you feel sick first, but then you recover a hit point. It's no little things like that, little things that turn things on their head as well slightly.
I also like to do a lot of magic items that are specifically culturally flavored, to where they're not necessarily always obviously useful. For example, in like a Celtic type of community, they might find like a hero harness, which is essentially like a big old belt with a gnarly like carved buckle, and they're like, okay, cool, I'm going to put it on, and it'll function like armor, even though it's just covers their waist, but they're not going to necessarily see it. Or they might find it, an animal totem thing. I mean, there was one they actually found that was just a necklace with a bunch of dried grubs that were hanging on, basically lacquered dried grubs hanging off of it. And like, oh, this is gross, but every time you broke one of those grubs off and threw it on the ground, it rose out of the ground as a carrion crawler. So it's like,
yeah, a limited number of grubs on there, but yeah.
And it's just the idea of having items that are not necessarily. I mentioned it in another stream, like the blacksmith's hammer. That was the most powerful item in like several adventures of a campaign, but it looked like just an ordinary rusted hammer. Blacksmith's hammer sitting on his forge. I like doing unassuming magic items that have significance within the cultures they're in and are worth taking, but may not necessarily attract the treasure-eyed adventurer. It's just like in one of the last temple I ran them through. They came to a room where there was a pile of skulls in the middle of the room, and they're like, "Oh, this is unpleasant." I'm like, "Yeah, but they're all well cleaned and nicely manicured and kept up." And each skull turned out to be the skull of a philosopher, and you could ask a question of a skull once a day if you wanted to. If it was a library, it was just they were all in skull form.
That's cool.
No, yeah. that's a different way
for a non-literate kind of a society. It was a good way of having a repository of knowledge that made sense in the campaign.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, there's magic items that are somewhat mundane, but have a value to specific people in a society. I mean, adventurers might not be particularly interested in an ever-burning piece of coal that's at the perfect temperature to bake perfect bread, but the baker in town will certainly pay them handsomely for it.
Yeah, 5e has a good mix of those now. They have like the spoon of stirring. It just sits there. They have a cape of like glorious blowing or something. Like it's basically a cape of billowing. It's always billowing in the wind, even if it's not windy. It's like so you can stand there and look all fancy.
I mean, I know there was another player that told me about that they got their hands on a candle where you would just flick your finger and then bam, it's lit, and then flick your finger again and it's off, and it would never burn out as a candle. And it's like that's perfect for wizards. You can, because it's always the whole thing of like you're going to be reading into the night. Well, now you've got basically a nightstand or a piece of light, so you can always have that.
We had liar's cheese in my campaign. As cheese, but if you ate it, you could only tell the truth for an hour.
Yeah. I like the idea of for Halakar here making healing potions become addictive.
Yeah, I mean, there are many ways you can
I
go
could
about
say
it.
maybe see doing that with some healing potions, or if you're doing a dark fantasy type of campaign, it would be fitting.
Definitely. I mean, there's also the whole like, oh, what if you start chucking multiple potions in? Well, now you're going to get open that wonderful table of multiple potions,
Yes,
multiple
and
effects.
potion miscibility. Yeah,
Exactly.
I hope you can survive an internal explosion.
And the whole question is like, oh, but what if I take 2 healing potions at the same time? It's like, well, one after the other to heal up. It's like, well, are they 2 different potions? If so, let's get the chart out. Because who said that they were made by the same methods?
Well, the one thing I do like about to kind of mention Mage's response to Halakar here, I did like that the lowest rung of healing potion in 5e, which isn't as potent in 5e as say like a regular healing potion would be say in AD&D, is just an herbal mix. It's not even magical. You can make it with an herbalist skill. That kind of makes sense. And I have those things like they're available in almost every village.
Yeah, that
because
makes sense.
you're going to have a healer.
That certainly
I
does.
just thought I'd bring up Halakar's comment here. In this,
The Yogstone.
It never seems to be more than 30, but
Let's see.
30 must be the
Pulling up
limit.
D&D Beyond now. Where's my homebrew tab?
Yeah.
Isn't there another spell in 2nd edition where like the cleric can basically force an entire crowd to listen to whatever it is he's orating about, and then for the next hour or so they have to talk about whatever subject he just brought up?
Enthrall, right? I think that's the one.
Is
Yeah,
that
I
the
think
one?
so.
Okay.
It's
Or
a
it might
great-
be water cooler talk. That's, I guess, a good name for it too.
That's a good name, yeah.
Has anybody? Here's one that I've done a couple times. But do you ever do magic items that are like overly specific?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
Because I did a skull based one that it was only effective against the basically the race of the skull that it was taken from. And it had a fear effect. Basically, you could chuck it at him and it would cause fear, kind of like a fear grenade. But and I was inspired by the Tathlum, the Celtic, brain balls that they called them, where they would basically make them out of the gray matter of their enemy and then chuck them at them to curse them.
I've never done anything like that. But when you said specific, I was thinking like specifically geared to the game or a scenario or whatever.
Oh no, I was thinking
the
like
item has a one specific use.
Very niche kind of usage.
Dungeon Minister's suggestion here: dagger +1 against Steve.
With Steve.
God damn it, Steve.
I have had in one game somebody had there was a poison that was made specifically to kill a nobleman. I'm like, it was a magical poison. It's like you can put it in every drink at the party. It'll kill the Duke. So that way we make sure he's going to drink it.
The stick of repelling lizard men on Tuesdays. I quite like that one.
I do love totally a different subject, but it's the 3-part poison from the old Anti-Paladin article.
Yeah.
Back in the day where he's like, oh, the first part was in the wine, the second part was in the meal, and the third part was in the candle you burned by your bedside.
that's where you gotta like just be so forward looking. It's crazy. But I mean, I know I took like the lenses of minutia, and I basically twist them to be like these were now, the jeweler's, appraisal thing that they normally have. So, I mean, same properties. It was just a different background, which the players more or less, they like that. They're still used to like the lenses of minutia, even though they just look like the really big things put on the eyes to evaluate gems.
Well, as Gene's comment here, usually look through spells to find odd effects to add to items. Yeah, I like to do that sort of thing, and that
it's
really
the easiest way to make an item.
I mean, that was the basis for a lot of items in MERP. You had like spell items that could replicate the effect of a specific spell however many times per day, and some of those spells could be very minor, very specific, and that It's
pretty much the classic application of potions in D&D.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Pick a spell. I mean, there's no potion of fireball, but I guess there could be. They did have the necklace of fireballs.
There is a potion of dragon's breath.
Yeah, but potion of fireball, what is it going to do? Turn you into the fireball?
I mean, there are players out there who will just chuck that immediately, like, I am the fireball.
Yeah,
I mentioned it.
The potion of fireball that turns you into the fireball is called chili.
Yeah.
I mentioned it on the Discord before we came in here, but one of the spells I created as a DM for my campaign, I just created it and I put it in my homebrew stuff on D&D Beyond, and I've got the homebrew activated for character generation because I have some homebrew class options, but I forgot that shows everything homebrew to my players, and so one of my players picked up this custom spell that I had made off of the list, and I just let him keep it. It's funny. I named it after a Metallica song, not because it's Metallica themed, but it's called Lightning Ride, and effectively it's kind of like a Misty Step sort of a spell, but you transform yourself into a bolt of electricity and then move to a point 30 feet that you can see, and you do damage to any creature in the intervening line between you and the point you go to. However, if you hit something that's non-conductive, you stop immediately and take damage. But he's used that in the middle of fights. He's also used it to hurt his own character a couple of times because he forgets. Or you hit that monster that is immune to electricity.
It's essentially a javelin of lightning with some sort of minor teleportation ability.
Yeah, except for it's a spell. It works exactly. It was based on the Misty Step spell from 5th edition, which is just a short little turn into mist, go to 30 feet away. Except for instead of turning into mist, I had it turn into lightning. And I also, because it did damage along the way, I upped the level of the spell from Misty Step too. But it's funny.
Misty Step is that spell I see included in so many role-playing game horror stories, though. It seems to be one that people like to try to abuse.
Oh, yeah.
Every way.
Yeah, because they always forget that the part of the spell is like that you can see.
Mm-hmm.
Like the target has to be someplace. I want to turn a Misty Step into the other room. Okay, you hit the wall.
Yep. Yeah, so people do subtly forget those little clarifiers.
I do have to say it made me smile though the first time I saw a player actually using a spell I created in game. So
no.
But although when he first used it, I realized I had an error in the description of the spell that made it overkill. I'm like, all right, dude, I've got to tell you, I'm going to republish it as the corrected version because the one you're using is broken.
So, Mage, you prefer using spells pretty much from the book? Spells and magic
items. Yeah, more or less, unless I have a reason to create something new. And even when it comes to expanded materials like Unearthed Arcana or the spell compendiums, I treat them as sort of pre-approved if somebody wants to study them, but they're not available by default. If a player wants to create their own, then I'll go through the usual process. I'll look it over, but it so rarely comes up. But then I run deadly games. Most players don't make it to even where they can scribe their scrolls, let alone create new spells or afford a lab to create new spells. You can technically do it at level 1, but
Halakar's on fire tonight. Halakar's on fire.
Yeah, I've already mentioned in other streams the Feather of Heinous Tickling, which was the most overlooked magic item in my campaign. Everybody's like, well, I guess I get the gold feather. Okay, well.
Yes, I mean, the ugly, been hit with the ugly stick was the put down from university.
But by AD&D terms, though, if your charisma goes low enough, it works as positive with orcs. So you could just be upping your charisma with orcs and stuff, right?
And you could have a revulsion effect on humans, can't you? On good aligned races. Yes. So it could be positive.
I want to go into politics in the orcish community, so start beating me with the ugly stick.
I mean,
beauty beer.
Oh dear.
Now we have to invent the beer goggles, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Beauty beer goggles. The ugly stick. Oh. So it's all just going into shenanigans. But
Magic
still
items are so fun. I can't stop making them. I've got like umpty billion pages of them.
yeah.
Well, I do brew a potion of dispel fatigue for my players every time we play, otherwise known as coffee.
I found my old AD&D campaign notebook the other day, and I have like 5 pages of nothing but magic cosmetics that I wrote up back in the day, and not like in the goofy Avon fashion sense, but like things that made sense culturally. Like, you might go to some Middle Eastern or Egyptian themed setting where they've got like the kohl around their eyes and it does X, or perfumes and and body oils and stuff like that are potion like but aren't chug-a-lug. They're like kind of like you have a lot of the filters and stuff along the potion list where it's your applications as opposed to things you would necessarily drink or whatever. But yeah, I found this like 3-4 pages of these things.
We just come up with spell side effects for beer.
Yeah,
Mirror
pretty
image
much.
and blur. And of course, there was the cantrip trip that was in Arcana.
I think it's important to remember that the tradition of players creating spells and DMs creating magic items and spells to throw into their campaign is as old as the game. I mean, Melf's Acid Arrow is Gygax's kid wanting a different spell effect, or Melf's minute meteors and stuff like that.
Mordenkainen's.
Yeah.
Tensor, Big B.
Mordenkainen.
Yeah, I mean, part of that I have to imagine is because back then there were so few spells that they're kind of coming up. We should have a spell for this, or I want to do a thing. What about retheming or reskinning spells? Do you guys do that? Like,
mechanically, if it's the exact same, then sure you change the
Yeah.
fireball from fire to acid to frost.
We had a druid in the last game I played in before your sex, just the last opportunity I had to play in, where she was this creepy gothy druid type character, and her healing spell was all these tiny spiders came up and crawled over you and started spinning a web over your wound and then closed it up. And so every time you got healed by her, you had to deal with being covered with spiders.
Yeah, see, that's just flavor though. That doesn't affect the game.
But it was just it was really cool.
I told you about the one spell I created for my character. It was basically a reskinned Burning Hands. My wizard was a follower of Poseidon, so I went with a lightning theme. So instead of fire, I was shooting out lightning.
Yeah.
The enhancement was I made it a level 2 spell, and I was able to affect my flanks as well as my front, not just my front squares. But yeah, it effectively reskinned. I don't mind that. Players want to suggest that, and go for it. If you're not changing anything mechanically, then yeah, by all means.
If you want to be an ice mage and you're going to go with fireball, but it's cold, it's like some sort of ice blast instead of fire, and your magic missiles are little ice bolts, and using some 5th edition spells. If you're going to do the Arms of Hadar, whatever spell, is like, okay, well, cool. Then you have like maybe a bunch of ice comes up and grips people or whatever. It doesn't matter. Entangle. Mm-hmm. They're caught in a sheet of ice. It's that thing you always see in the cartoons where the ice ray goes out there and their feet are caught in the ice.
Feet are stuck. Yeah,
exactly. Just watch He-Man cartoons. You'll get plenty of ideas.
I am known for spouting out very bad puns mid game sometimes, so I changed Vicious Mockery to Vicious Puns, and the psychic damage from being hit with all the puns.
I think Vicious Mockery was likely a spell created by gamers because of their experience as gamers, because we're always like that.
Right, curses.
Yes.
How vicious are you with curses?
Yes.
As vicious as need to be.
You don't need to be vicious. You have to be. There is nothing nice about curses, and you should make the players suffer as much as possible.
Go on, Saxius. Tell us your stories. Go on, Saxius.
Just age them. Just watch their horror as you just tell them. Add 5 years to your character sheets. Have this be done. Or just... what else have I done to them? Oh, I'm trying to think of one of the other good ones I had here.
While you're thinking, my my necromancer got cursed twice actually during the campaign. The first time it was what's this interesting red liquid coming from this very strange fountain-like receptacle. It smells earthy. I wonder. I have to touch it. I have to find out what it does. And it was cursed by a cult of Baphomet. And he sprouted a couple of small horns. And until he could rid himself of the curse, whenever he was put in a threatening or stressful situation, he had to make a saving throw, or he would just go berserk and charge in and attack with whatever he was holding in his hands at the time, which is great when you're a mage. Really. Couldn't cast any spells while he was in that mode until he got the. But it was a really flavorful curse because he was essentially, it was the blood of Baphomet that had seeped into him, so he became very bovine. In his,
I hit my nephew with a pretty nasty cursed item at one point. He didn't even get any benefits out of it. But then again, one should not steal a jade monkey statue out of a temple to a monkey god. But so he first started having bad dreams, so we're involving this a leering monkey every time he went to sleep. And the joke was, there's an evil monkey in my closet. But he would go to sleep and he would have this monkey appear in his dreams, this horrible leering monkey in his dreams, to where his wizard was having a hard time getting the rest to recoup his spells. So then the party had to start pumping him up with basically magical amphetamines to keep him going because he was getting levels of exhaustion. And as the curse progressed, he would then start seeing the monkey while he was awake. Like they'd be in a bazaar in a town or something like that. And he'd look and he'd see like the monkey in the background, and then he'd walk by an alley, and then the monkey would be down the alley, and then eventually actual monkeys started showing up and following him. And if it had been progressed, he would have eventually been jumped by a group of like 10 to 100 monkeys that would have torn his character apart until he.
Oh, lovely.
Nice.
It was a very Lovecraftian, monkey-themed
Yes.
curse. And if anybody knows me, I like monkeys. So,
So
I think with curses, I mean, it comes a point where if you've got a DM who reads a bit of Lovecraft or plays a bit of Call of Cthulhu, and the DM decides to drop in some cursed items, it can be much worse for players.
yeah, I mean, they got to the point where he was seeing the phantasmal monkeys in public while he was awake, and then he ended up finding out that he had to destroy it. He either had to return the idol to where they got it from, and they're like, no, we're not going back there because we barely got out of there in the first place, or destroy it. And the only way to destroy it was to throw it into a volcano. Well, he managed to actually use it in the final battle against the big bad in that campaign that took place at a volcano. He's like, aha, I throw it in. The big boom. And so it was fun.
Anyway, Saxius, you remembered some of yours.
Yes. So one of the ones that I gave out was it was, so we all know the potion of heroism that a warrior can drink, and then you get more levels increases and all that. Well, I basically gave them out an amulet where it's the amulet of heroism, so same effect, except it's a permanent thing that permanently, so you can give you boost up, once it starts being activated, so on and so on. Wonderful stuff, except the curse it was the opposite. So it gave you a false belief that you were better when it made you worse. It made you believe that you could go out, I'm going to go out and do these fantastical things. I'm a hero. I've got heroism. I can activate this when I need to. Yeah, that didn't work.
So potion of false bravado.
False bravado.
Amulet of delusion, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. All of this mixed in. I was just like, but because the immediate identification was going to come back with like amulet of heroism and the effects being, that of heroism, and they're like, that's fantastic. We can have the fighter be up more front, we can be more bold.
And of course, the character would believe they are better, so they would resist any attempt to have that amulet taken from them.
Exactly, and That's the best part. And
No, the best part is when the dice rolls are so good that your characters
Backs
are
it
constantly
up.
getting 90s and 20s. It backs up the belief, and they don't know.
exactly, and they've got no clue. And to them, it's just like a great epic duel, while to everyone else, is just watching these characters being pummeled into the ground. And of course, I like to add in the whole caveat of it's a cursed item. You're not getting this off very easily. And I do allow the players to get creative about how we get all magical items off. If it's a magical ring, you can cut the
Action.
finger off.
Amputation.
Amputation. I've had attempts where they cast enlarge item onto it, and they then had to do several strength rolls to basically force it off, as the magic would literally clamp onto the finger or onto the part of the person, and they would have to get it off without flaying the character alive, because it's not going to happen that easily. You're fighting magic with more magic. Usually the magic of the cursed item is stronger, so I hope you brought you lots of butter. And
with this delusion, I mean, yeah, two people in chat came with exactly the same idea straight away. That exists already, that delusion effect.
Yeah, there are potions of delusion and whatnot, but still,
every pub.
How am I going to?
Every pub has them. Every pub has potions of delusion.
Beer goggles, all of these other things. My point here being, I like giving this sort of things to my players, where there's an immediate, really good thing for them, and if they then decide, like, we're going to keep on pushing for the identify until we are absolutely certain that there is nothing else in there, if they can't find it.
We're going to play a very simple. We're going to play a very simple game now. I want you to work out what my favorite magic item, cursed magic item in existence is.
I'm not familiar enough with the published ones off by memory.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay.
That's. I'm gonna have to say what.
I'm drawing a blank.
I'm gonna have to say what else said. I am not familiar with the.
I mean, even if I am, I'm drawing a blank.
and I've told you both wrong.
No, because I actually have not read the goddamn.
I think you'll find you do know. You do know.
Are we on about? Oh, it's Ghost of Salt Marshes. There's something in there. It's probably going to be a ring.
No, there isn't.
Well, then stop it and get
something
to the point.
Being contrary.
Exactly.
Potion contrariness.
the ring of contrariness.
Oh yeah.
I absolutely love it. I love it when a player's got one of those.
No, you don't, John.
Yes, I do.
Speaking to Saxius a bit, I did do the one elemental gauntlet for in one of my campaigns where the cleric put it on his bunch. I think I've described it as a bunch of stone rings encrusted in runes that are held together by iron chains, and he like slipped his arm into it and then had like a big old stony gauntlet at there, and he's like, every time he would hit, he would do like plus 2d6 damage. As long as he kept hitting, it would increase by one more d6 after that too. So he like hit for plus 2d6 with it, and then the next time it would be plus 3d6. But every time he used it, it would be a 5% cumulative chance of him going into berserker rage and attacking the nearest opponent. And by the time he failed that percentage check, he was up to 9d6 additional damage, and then went berserk on the rest of the party. They literally had to pull his arm off to get the thing off of him. And they're like, "You're the cleric, heal yourself, you dick."
I mean, my players have been accumulating all of the cursed items that they find along the adventures, and they've been keeping them in a glass cage where twice there's been attempts of stealing from them where they
are the people from Friday the 13th series.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. But they've got some interesting ones of just like, here's a sword, it's a +2 for normal, plus 5 if you fight against these monsters, but you go berserk, and when you're finished with the battle, you go so crazy you run into the woods and you basically become a hermit there. Because I remember I got that specifically because I was reading Pendragon, the system, and one of the side effects of your character invoking their passions is that if they fail their passions, they become so passionate that they strip out of their armor and run to the nearest woods.
I love the
Actual
like you
mechanic.
could do like I would love to do like the Emperor's New Clothes magic item. Somehow pull that off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody, it'd be right up there with like the Head of Vecna story. I'm sure everybody's heard the Head of Vecna tale.
No.
Have you ever heard the Head of Vecna tale? Oh my god, it's like a classic in gaming circles. Supposedly, the Head of Vecna, where you have to cut your head off and put the Head of Vecna on, and like it's one of those did it actually happen stories. But yeah, the Head of Vecna is one of those tales.
You have to cut your own head off and put the head on before you die.
Well, yeah, because like everything else, Vecna-wise, and what it is the story. The way the story goes is that a DM, after having talked up all the various other Vecna items, that all require you to replace an existing body part with the Vecna part, right?
Yeah, the hand and
plants
the,
the seed that there is the Head of Vecna in the campaign. And it's a Knights at the Dinner Table thing, I think is what Herax is saying, but it's kind of made it into the popular. But yeah, it's plants the seed in the campaign to where they eventually find this what looks like a severed lich's head. And they're like, this must be the Head of Vecna. Here, cut my head off and put it on right at the last minute.
Right. I got to pass on that, thank you.
But like it or not, like them or not, kind of real quick thing on magic items. If whether or not you like feats or not in your games, they do make a great additional route for magic items. Magic items that give a feat instead of a spell effect are really useful too. I know for a monk in my game, he found these fist wrappings that were done up with all sorts of ancient characters, think like Chinese characters or whatever, and he like wrapped them on there, and it gave him the knowledge of the master that used to wear them. So he got a couple of extra feats that allowed him to be a better hand-to-hand combatant, because monks need that.
It's funny when you say that, because I did in my real life game, my group did get a basic gauntlets from it was supposed to be like the gauntlets of a wrestling knight. So the person who wields or uses said gauntlets, they are now able to basically have grappling as a feat, so a much more improved version of grappling, so that they can actually go and take people on hand to hand. So that was a major thing. The group's just not decided that they're not going to use that, because none of them wants to get that close.
Speaking of cursed items that are useful, I remember, wasn't me that made it, but another GM who did it. It basically had an item it was back in AD&D, so encumbrance was important. Its only deal was to increase your encumbrance. It was an incredibly ornate looking item, so it looked like it must be magical and important, and it had a magical Dwemer, because of course it was magical, but it resisted like quick and easy like identifications and stuff, so it would require more advanced magic to figure out its secrets. And so the idea was
that. I think one had that cursed lodestone.
Maybe that's what it is, because I think our DM made it more tempting by making it seem like a magic item. But yeah, it's just, because you didn't want to get rid of it, because like, I got some sort of palantir and it's all gold and jewel encrusted and stuff. It's gonna be worth something, and you're like, God, I can't. It's so heavy.
I'm a fan of withering curses.
Oh yeah,
and not ones that are easily removed with a remove curse, but one where there's a process. And I think you can, because I mean, you can make adventures out of it. The character's got to find the cure before it kills them. But also it grates at the players. The whining begins, and it's the kind of whining you can just enjoy, because hey, you're playing a game about fantasy and sorcery. Something like this is going to happen.
Curses are a great way of pushing a plot hook, aren't they? And getting.
I don't think my players hated me more than after I read the article on curses in Dragon Magazine. I was all supercharged.
You want to try them all out.
Well, yeah, it wasn't individual curses. They were talking about how to do divine curses based on deities, and that's actually when I pulled it out on that one thief who decided to try and use stolen piety to try and heal somebody.
Nice.
But I know we had somebody get cursed by Lolth once, and that was fun, because it started out with, there's a spider in your bed. You put on your helmet, there's a spider in your helmet. Yeah. You go to eat and your bread is full of spiders. It was just spider here, spider there, and then it progressed to like you go out to the privy. There's a dog-sized spider in the outhouse. Like, slowly but surely, more and more and worse spiders.
Yes, very nice, very nice. There's all sorts of things you can do with curses, and the more dodgy your reading material, the better you become at creating them. Yes. So curses, yeah, thumbs up for curses. I like them. I like the way you can just. I mean, when it happened to my necromancer, he was absolutely driven to pursue any quest that might rid him of the 2 curses that he picked up, and he completely derailed the party's entire campaign because he was evil. He lied and cheated, and told the rest of the party that this was obvious. This is exactly where they all needed to go to find the whatever it was. Well, it wasn't. It was just where he had to go to get the fresh beating heart of a black dragon that he'd been told he needed. So it was like right, we're going that way, and he just lied but it focused us, and that's the best thing. For me, that's the best thing about curses. It really gives the players something to work on, especially if the curse is getting worse over time. It creates panic. So, a favorite made up magic item in a published module, because there's always made up magic items in published modules. Was often.
Mm-hmm. The question is, can I think of a favorite?
Yeah.
It's not that I run a lot of modules. That's my thing. Everything's very much.
It could be a campaign setting or something, an item that
fair enough
an NPC has in a campaign setting. Think of anything?
I'd have to go over to my shelf and start looking to see if I could trigger a memory, but I know there's something.
Favorite is difficult to solve.
Yes, Slan. Yes. That's awesome.
I mean, it is by definition a magical item, but in the Red Hand of Doom, players do get their hands on a phylactery that belongs to a lich. Now, not that the players can actually make use of it, but the fact that it lands within the player's hands, and once assuming that they do any form of research, just bare bones research for it, it often presents such an interesting conundrum for the players that I love watching, because you've got the players who are going to go, we have to destroy it, and the other players going, what if we bargain with them? And the other one's going, oh god, throw it away, or try to put it into a pocket dimension or anything to keep it from getting anywhere near the dead. In the holy events that the lich is actually already dead and just needs a nearby corpse to return to life. It's just one of those cases of it doesn't help the players, but it brings forward such a big plot event that the players now have to look at that little tiny item and they have to make a very big decision, because damaging it is going to inform the lich that something's happening, and if it's not dead, that's a very big problem. And it's the sort of thing of, again, you can really mess with the players' minds, especially with my real life group. They've played with me for about a year, so they're already in a very paranoid state with me sitting at the DM seat. So then when they get this, I expect them to just look at it and go, we don't want this, Oscar, please.
I think Herax is right here for the classic old modules. And yeah, Michael's mentioned the lantern in the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth. It's an artifact. It's an extremely powerful artifact, and it gives massive scope for the extra quests to find the coloured prisms that give it its variety of powers. It's expensive to refuel, but it is so powerful. But when I put it in my campaign, when they did Sojkanth, they were sent on the quest by Big B, who wanted the items returning to him for safekeeping. So they weren't going to argue with that. Maybe in hindsight, I should have allowed them to have a little play with it, but I didn't because I'm nasty like that. Same for the weapons in White Plume Mountain. But that's the it's Dowd's Wondrous Lanthorn. Beautiful piece of artwork in the adventure as well for it. Essentially, it's a lantern which has a variety of you can put a variety of prisms in there to put out various types of light, and each of the light has a different effect. And I've got a fly bothering me. Do apologize. I'm trying to catch this fly that's flitting past, and I keep missing.
So somebody's cursed you.
Yes.
Everard's annoying fly.
Everard's annoying fly. Yes. So, a favorite magic item from? Oh, you don't do published adventures, do you?
I read them. In fact, Sojkanth is one of my favorite modules published ever. It's actually one of the first ones I ever owned.
A favorite item for any of these published adventures?
One that always stands out, and it's published only in that it was in the pages of Dragon, is just because it's a great name with a fun adventure, and that's got to be the Sword Fed Fencer. It's like a plus 5 or 6 Holy Avenger that is kept in a fortress of Githyanki in the astral plane, and that's the adventure. You have to go to that fortress to get it.
High level stuff, then.
Yeah, well, it was fun. I think, of all of the other items, I really like the Robe of Useful Items. Published magic item, that is. From an adventure, I don't know. I can't remember anything that stands out from an adventure specifically.
I ran the I don't know if you're familiar with the Wizards Challenge. It's a second ed sort of one-on-one module.
Yeah,
I know it exists.
I'm familiar with it by name.
I ran it as a proper module because I'm wacky that way. It's not a great item, but my group had it. I loved it. It was this little item there called the Staff of Proficiency. And very simply, it's a magical quarterstaff that gives proficiency in quarterstaff to anybody who wields it. So to the wizard who didn't have any proficiency in quarterstaff, it was perfect because he could just pick it up and could use it. Counts as a magic item. And I didn't think anything of it. It's it's an interesting little item, but they loved it. They're they're passing it around. Okay, it's magic. We can use it to affect magic creatures. Anybody can use it. We don't have to worry about not being proficient.
Great concept for other low-level magic items too. Just items that give you the proficiency with them. And again, not a groundbreaking item.
I can see this being the sort of thing you would find in like old ruins of where they would be training people.
Yeah,
exactly. Here's the sword.
This is the standard staff issued by the Holy Order of whatever.
That order failed because
everyone of the traveling monks wanders with one.
The history of the order is that they failed and died out because in their training they relied on magic weapons of proficiency rather than actually learning the skill.
There was a duck rogue who kept hitting himself in the face with the quarterstaff, and so he went on a quest and found a wizard to create this one for him. Requires the incantation dodge, parry, thrust.
The holy hand grenade there. Yeah, there's a
seen that up here. That comment up here. Holy hand
you gotta wonder how many times that thing's been written up for campaigns.
I have D4 holy hand grenade dice.
I do have to say one item that was inspired by a movie that made it into rotation heavily with our group and then inspired other things was just dragon scale armor. Watching the Dragon Slayer movie and seeing him make that shield out of the girl make the shield for him, out of the discarded scales. Every dragon that we fought was like, I'm gonna skin it and make a suit of armor out of it.
I mean, I don't mind allowing that, but I also tell them that a smith capable of doing that. Is rare. It's it's possible, but you can't just hold the scale and expect to get all the bonuses.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So that's step one, but then step two is also the whole case of I come from the opinion of like, well, it's the equivalent of wearing the skin of just any enemy. You know, most monsters of that group are gonna think you're absolutely crazy.
Oh yeah, wearing a suit of dragon scale armor and then running into any kind of dragon kind would immediately inspire hatred.
Exactly. Like it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum, chromatic, metallic, they will all look at you and go, no. No. We, the apex predators, do not allow this.
But I mean, I've always ruled that,
especially if it has the tattoo of their best friend on it. You know,
Vermithrax.
I knew him in college. He was my roommate.
Those sort of skin armors are, of course, incredibly desirable for any character classes that can't wear metal armor.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah, a druid with the animal scale, Ankeg shell scale, like they had in the Baldur's Gate games, and
Umber Hulk,
dragon
Titan armor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you still require it's a special skill being able to forge it into a lasting armor.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are you doing with that 3 Kreen, hollowing him out so he can wear him as a suit of ready-made armor?
And you can just give it the stats of something like scale mail, but that's still 2 points better than a druid could normally get, and you probably get some sort of resistance in there as well.
But even if it's not magical,
if you had the splat book from 2E, you knew exactly what its armor class was because it was in there, or Dark Sun.
But even if it's not magical, I mean, I'm thinking first edition. But scale mail, base scale mail has a movement rate cap of 6. And so you get that. So okay, so I get the NKEG scale, for instance, and let's say it's movement rate 9 or even 12. So it may not give you better protection, but it gives you the better mobility, which is still a massive bonus.
Yes.
Or you can just magically enchant it to get rid of all these limitations.
This is like Elven Chain. It's
That
basically chainmail, but it wears like cloth.
Yeah, again, I don't see a reason.
That was actually kind of the inspiration for Elven Steel, anyways. I was talking about it earlier. It's like Elven Chain is magical, sort of.
Yeah. Well, there's many ways you can get around it. I mean, again, if we're going to go in for like the druid aspects, again, you can look at the various kind of insectoids, and you can just find the larger versions, and you can just fashion, anywhere from breastplates, full suits of armor. Like there are many.
Hey, there's even historical versions of that. You got different tribes in various places wearing gator and crocodile skins and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, again, scale and hide like that is tough. It's not something you just penetrate. With your
just ask anybody who's had to try and shoot an alligator. Most bullets bounce off of them. I've never had to either, but I know plenty of people who live in the South where there are gators, and they're like, it can be difficult. I mean,
there's a reason why they've been apex predators for millions of years.
Yeah, they used to eat dinosaurs, so
so that's what happened to the dinosaurs.
They outlived the dinosaurs. The same crap, they had to go through the same crap that took out the dinosaurs, but they're still here. But so are frogs. And
dinosaurs
and
are
sharks.
Dinosaurs are still here.
Non-avian dinosaurs.
Yeah, birds.
The non-avian dinosaurs died out. Chickens are velociraptors. Yes, I get that. Well, actually T-Rexes, but
yeah, I was about to say, what are they T-Rex? Anyway, thank you. All right, back on topic. Thank you very much.
Chicken skin armor.
No, we just need giant chickens, magical chickens that can grow in size.
In my
current magical wand of summon dinosaur and it produces
the
chickens.
halflings have riding chickens.
And we know, Saxus, if you put a chicken on your head, you become invisible, don't you?
That is just fact these days. That is the magical component going forward for all my D&D games, except for my Saturday game. They won't accept this in, but I will convince them. Just give me time.
Yeah, careful, Hyrex, with those wolf or bear-headed skin hoodies, because you never know when you're going to pick up one that's going to curse you with a lycanthropy.
I mean, on a quick side note,
because there are some of those old werewolf myths where, like, they would shed their skin and become human, and then they would put their skin back on to become a wolf.
Yeah, isn't that like one of the Brother Grimm tales where there's a
and then there's the
Selkies
too that were seal skins too.
Yeah, fair enough.
The old classic Swan May from Monster Manual 2.
Well, listen,
Saxus, we interrupted you mid-flow. You're about to come up with some
Well, I
further-
was literally just about to say, like, I know in Lion and Dragon, there is the invisibility spell does require the mage to take his shoes off and swing it around his head. I was just like, well, just change with a chicken. We're all good.
There you go.
It's just like it's already codified into some of the rules. But furthermore, from there, I'm just trying to think, like, what other spells really that there are, or what other magical items we can really bring in, because there's so much, from magical weapons.
That's a topic that could go on forever.
Oh, good, yeah.
Dead silence. Somebody cast a silence spell.
Well,
I think something you brought up in your recent video about Mage, about experience points for magic items. How did you do you play that by the book in terms of giving out magic, giving out XP for the magic item or XP for the items when they're sold?
Yes, actually, in my first dead game, 100%. It's exactly by the book. The players, when they get back to their safe space, they choose whether they're going to sell the excess magic or they're going to keep it. In which case, they get either the XP for keeping it or selling.
Do they get the full value of the sale?
If they do it right away, yes.
I mean, in terms of, say for example, it says, this item is worth 10,000 gold pieces, and there's nobody about that can afford to spend 10,000 gold pieces on it.
Well, I tie that in with the downtime. So, for example, I bank the time passage because I do the real time away from table equals time spent in game, and when it's not possible, I bank the time. So often when an adventure ends, there's several months of downtime. So I just assume they're spending that time finding a buyer. It's not like they can go to a shop; they have to send word. They find people, and so yeah, it's just part of the process. I don't make them roll for anything. If they choose to keep it and sell it later, then they'll have to go through a process. So it's just sort of part of the adventure end downtime. That's the bonus. They get the full value, and it's easy if they do it right away. If not, then they have to play it out, if that makes any sense to you.
Because I mean, I didn't always give the full value, and they get the XP for whatever they. I mean, say for example, if you take a gem back to town, and you'll get the full XP for the gem, 1,000 GP or whatever it was, but the jeweler might only offer you 100 gold pieces for it.
Oh yeah, because they're going to have to make up their markup.
Well, it's usually the other way around. They prefer they'll offload all the coin and keep the portable wealth. So they're not usually selling off the gems unless they need to break it up for a division. But they would rather keep the gems, so it's because they're lighter to carry. It's the coin they try to get rid of. They'll spend it first. But yeah, no, I don't mind. I don't play with the numbers. It's at an adventure's end. At that point, at adventure's end, it's book value. I just keep it simple. That they'll have enough that it'll level them up, or that sort of thing. But if they choose to sell something mid-game, something they've already kept, then it's a different process. Then they might not get full value, right?
I mean, like I said, in terms of experience points, I'll always give the full experience points to the value of monetary treasure. But if they sell a magic item and they choose to accept 1,000 gold pieces for something they could have got 5,000 gold pieces for,
then that's on them. Yeah,
that's on
I
them.
used to do it that way. Yeah. I just simplified. That's all.
Okay. I mean, I don't give them the full experience. If they choose to accept 1,000 gold pieces for a magic item, they'll get 1,000 XP. So.
Now, usually I require them. They usually have to hire a sage to identify the stuff. I don't tell them what it is, so that can be a problem. But I mean, in the case of Team Evil, for example, they're all affiliated with the Assassins and Thieves Guild. So the Thieves Guild and the Assassins Guild have people to identify this stuff. So that's a perk of being a member and paying your dues. But those who don't, then they have to go and pay through the nose for the sage. And that's just part of the game.
Okay. Hyrax has mentioned anti-magical magical items, and I suppose we could bring into this as well. What happens, for example, if a player, if a character has magic resistance?
If a what?
If a character has magic resistance,
Well, then you follow what the rules. What? So
do you make it affect any magic items that they're carrying?
Well,
Carrying, no, but if they're going to
No.
invoke an effect, possibly.
yeah, because we're not looking at like the beholder's
Not the
central
anti-magic.
eye.
And
Yeah, it's not anti-magic per se. It's magic resistance. So
So it's
They
only,
are very-
only when only,
When
only
you
Well, I
when
know
it's
in like
directed
in
at
the
them.
past when we were playing, if a character was wearing a ring of magic resistance or something like that, and the cleric went to heal him,
Mhm.
he would have to take the ring off before he could get full healing out of it.
yeah,
It's how we
Mhm.
always played it.
I mean, go on.
But yeah, I think Hyrax is talking more things like he mentioned specifically like Rod of Disenchantment, Rust Dust, things like that.
Cancellation effects, yeah.
Yeah, but even then, like magic resistance, there are very specific rulings for how that works. So it's not that it's going to affect items; it's specifically the effects. But then that will also be the effects, surrounding you or being cast upon you, good, bad, or whatever. It's all the same in the eyes of.
So, for
Magic
example, you slipped on a ring of invisibility and you had magic resistance. Would you rule that there was a 20% chance that the ring would fail?
Now, I know
Well-
some people rule it where the magic resistance doesn't kick in unless you are opposed to it.
Right.
That's how some
Well,
people play it.
I don't see why it should be allowed to. Like, I don't see why you shouldn't roll for that 20%, because it's not that magic resistance will be discriminating at any point. It's not as though you can actively, just say no, I
Yeah.
refuse to. Or
You can elect to fail a saving throw. That's
Mhm.
possible with the rules. With magic resistance, I always thought, I agree, it's a constant value you have no control over.
yeah,
Yeah, it's an innate thing. I mean, it's one of those things that's kind of nebulous because I could see like, depending on the origin of the magic resistance, maybe. But the ring of magic resistance, for example, doesn't say anything about a command word or anything. It's just on.
no,
It's just on.
I mean,
But it's easily, as you say, I can just take it off.
Exactly.
I can see an argument maybe again, like we're going to use the drow here because they've got an innate magic resistance, so that's
Yeah.
already a deeper part of them. I can see a reason where they might say, or where you can argue, fine, they can lower it for when they have to be healed or when they get given a splash spell and so on. But the chances of that happening to the male drow is so low to begin with that I don't see those spells being cast upon them.
With
I don't-
innate magic resistances, there's so many ways to interpret that too. I mean,
Yeah.
for like something like a drow or an elf or whatever, or a fairy, it could just be interpreted as awareness of or knowledge of magic.
Yeah.
To where it's not necessarily that they're more resistant specifically. So you could argue that they could lower their defenses if they wanted to.
That's at least the argument I have from the specifically those races' perspective. At the very least, that's my interpretation for them.
It's a little off topic, but I'm curious how you would rule this. So you were just talking about the drow. Okay,
Mhm.
so the drow have the ability to cast darkness.
Yeah.
All right. And they have the magic resistance. So
Yeah.
drow cast darkness, then they walk into that pool of darkness.
Yeah.
How do you rule what their magic resistance does?
Yeah, but so that's an area of effect. So it's not that they're canceling out the entire area; it's just canceling out the effect on them. But that's also being cancelled out of their dark vision sight to begin with.
But as far as effect on the spell itself, I don't think it actually affects the overall effect of the spell.
Yeah.
It just affects their.
So would you rule the drow walks into that pool of darkness and it just doesn't affect them? They can see normally.
Yes, but
I
I
would,
would
yeah.
have ruled that from step one because of their dark vision that they
Yeah.
can still see through that. That's my understanding of the spell and their
Well,
dark vision.
Depends on, I guess, if you're talking
capabilities.
about AD&D darkness or current darkness.
Well, my default is AD&D, but yeah,
because like the current version says it blocks any non-magical.
Yeah,
So even dark vision and
even dark vision.
enhanced
But
dark vision would
magic resistance is different in fifth
Yeah.
ed too. It's just
Yeah.
advantage on the save, whereas in
Yeah.
first
I
ed
was
it's
talking
its
about
own category.
Oscar's other argument about the vision being a factor there. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think if we're just on the merit of magic resistance, I would say it just doesn't affect the drow himself, which is why it's extra nasty.
Extra nasty. Yeah. No, I tend to agree. I was just curious as to what
Yeah.
your takes on it would be.
Yeah, well, it's anything like that will affect them directly, but again, because there's a wider effect, they themselves are not affected, but the wider effect beyond just them will still be in effect. I
Mhm.
don't know how else to word that in English to make somewhat sense.
I know what you meant.
I mean, obviously, Hyrex has said the way to get around drow magic resistance. Lightning bolt the ceiling.
But does lightning bolt do enough concussive force to the ceiling to collapse it?
And if you do that,
depends on
it'll
the
bounce
level.
back at you and hit you.
But gentlemen, is it all just a
the
giant illusion?
The rules for lightning say if you were to cast it on the ceiling, it would basically bounce back to you.
It would
I
depend on the
disbelieve
specific
this
environment.
illusion.
Well, if you're talking about a collapsible ceiling against the drow, it's probably stone.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Unless you happen to be against those drow that are in that one adventure in that one issue of Dragon Magazine that are living in a big tree in the middle of the forest.
Yeah.
They have this sealed off tree. Well, no, they've come up from the Underdark.
No,
and they have this fortress that they built.
No drow on the surface. No.
You have to read the adventure. It's basically an outpost that they've constructed to give them.
No, still no.
You're far too limiting.
I am very old school when it comes to drow. They are very rare.
These are the old school drow from like Dragon number 67.
G series drow.
Level 10 wizard spell. Reverse it all around.
Yes,
the
because
drow
there are absolutely no exceptions in fantasy.
Exactly. Now the drow are the elves, and the high elves are the drow.
Well, it was not saying anything like that. It was basically the whole point of the adventure is the drow have an incursion into this forest, and they're fucking up the forest from their little stronghold in this big ass tree that has no windows, and it's just, basically they've come up from the ground into the tree.
Right.
And used magic to make a big fortress on the surface in the middle of these woods so they can fuck up the woods. So,
right. Anyway, Michael, yes, I do agree. I like the way the drow items work in the D series. I love the tentacle rods are fantastic. Superb items. One of my favorite
those
items.
Stuck around. I mean,
they became canon, just like in the drow entries in the monster manuals, so that's now a major thing that the priestess runs around with.
All of that.
Yeah, so that's it's more or less here to stay.
Good, so it should be. Be.
At least in second edition, it disappeared in third.
No, they're
edition
still there.
No, still there.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Because
I've never seen Rust Dust. When did that come out?
I'm gonna guess it's much like the dust from a rust monster that you just sprinkle on top of something like
first
salt.
You get your rust monster, like we are talking about earlier with the carapaces. You get Triotus carapaces, and then you put it in a Cuisinart, and then you put it. You lay it out on the ground. You cast blade barrier around it, and
in D&D, a Cuisinart would be a magic item, I guess. Cylinder of food blending.
I know. Geek doesn't like this, but because it's sci-fi, but that's one of the fun things about playing games like Gamma World is like you find this strange device. It has buttons and a blade inside a transparent plastic container, and the players are like, "What is it?" It's a pre-fall artifact. And then I love the fact that their magic, their treasure chart in that game had things that had no rules. They just had a name. Like one of the things on there is a 5-prong Breen Gola. No explanation of what it is.
And not needed.
Totally up to you. But you'll have these characters carrying around modern day things that would be like, I've got an iPad, it doesn't work, and the screen is cracked, but this used to be something. It's magic.
Nice.
Tablet of viewing.
Oh no. I played in a Dark Heresy game where we got a hold of it. It's basically a tablet infused by a demon of knowledge, and all the players just wanted to make use of it to get their one thing or the other thing. And I was playing just an old, grizzled assassin who was just more or less like, I'm on my arc of redemption. I'm gonna die at the end of this, but I've not, had like it was just basically going like, okay, we're just gonna have to like make use of this thing to get through it. But like we basically use that as an excuse to just get any form of knowledge out of that we had an engineer in our team, so he concocted all sorts of fever dreams that he wanted from that. Sorry for the sudden tangent there, but it's just like that just brought back an immediate thing of like, oh,
Texas is experiencing an alignment shift.
it's just we tortured that DM the moment he gave us that tablet of with the knowledge demon. It was just like, oh no, he shouldn't have. We asked questions we should never have known in character.
Well, that's always the downfall of everybody.
Yeah.
One thing I liked about earlier editions of the game that doesn't feature nearly as much in more modern editions are character class specific magic items. And I think it really helped the magic users stand out because they had such a much wider array of magic items that they could use compared to all the other classes. If you didn't have a magic user in your party, then a load of these items are just completely redundant.
See, I'm of the opposite side. Like, if you didn't have things for the warrior, why? Just because there are so many other things that wizards would just be benefiting from, or that I see wizards just jumping out going, I want this, I want that, this, and so on. Like this.
Well, there are things for warriors. There are things for warriors. But it's just that there were so many more for the magic users.
Yeah. Like, I think that that's just needed more for the warriors, which is why I like to take weapons and give them extra stuff so that there are more for the warriors.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun creating specific weapons with specific powers and weapons that grow with the character as well. Powers that emerge as the character gets better at what they do. It helps to create unique stuff and make the player think that they're getting something as they go through the levels. They don't necessarily need to be particularly great powers.
They are getting something. They get to survive.
All right, gentlemen, I am gonna have to call it a night here. I am tired, and I've been waking up at 5 a.m. the last few weeks, so gonna have to call it now.
Oh, right, okay. It's actually bedtime, and I know Elfbait's gonna have to soon as well. So it might be a bit of a shorter stream tonight.
It was Dragon 73, by the way, that had that drow adventure.
Right. Okay. Well,
with the also originally named adventure Forest of Doom.
Forest of Doom. Yes.
The Forest Oracle of Doom.
I'm pretty sure it's still a better adventure. That issue also has the ecology of the Catoblepis in it, and an article on the half ogre.
Oh. Bye, Sexious.
It's Sexious.
So it's actually a quality module, or quality issue of Dragon.
Well, I've read as far as Dragon 8, I think, so far. So I've got a long way to go.
Step 2, man. Pick it up. Actually, that issue is like packed with all sorts of good stuff. I'm trying to vary what supplement to whatever I read each week to give a bit of variety. That's why I did the Carcass Crawler this week, and glad to say it was a much better edition. On theme, this same issue has a article titled "Non-Violent Magic Items: 100 Ways to Keep Players Guessing."
Excellent.
It's like a D100 chart of non-violent magic items.
What good stuff stands out?
It's Old Dragon, so it's essentially a wall of text with a few Parkinson illustrations. Let's see, carved stone miniature door about 4 by 1.5 by 1.5 inch. Excuse me, tiny print. Old Dragon, old eyes. Can be tuned to a particular door, a set of doors, or gate by use of a proper magic word. Thereafter, when its knob is pressed,
it's what?
Any such it's a door. It's knob. Any such door, the gate or gate within 20 feet will swing open by itself. So it's kind of interesting. It's little things.
I'm not going to put that in any of my games, especially with my Monday lot, because if you start bringing up knobs, then they're just going to descend into childishness.
Knobs that open gates, no less.
Yeah,
I will say that one thing about this Drow module, like it or not, this Drow adventure, it's got an excellent map that could be repurposed of a big ass tree with a whole dungeon inside it.
That's good.
This tree is like 100 feet across. So it's a ginormous tree, and it's got all kinds of cool traps and stuff in it.
I would have to reskin the Drow as rogue wood elves or wild elves or something.
Or you could even put them in as ettercaps and keep all the spidery webby things.
Yeah,
that way they're, because ettercaps are forest dwelling spidery things.
They're nasty as well.
Jesus, that's some high level Drow NPCs in there. Yikes. But no, it's a good issue. 73.
I just like to keep Drow deep underground and mysterious and rare.
Well, I feel like this is in a similar vein as the Drow that are showing up towards the end of the Giants series. They're kind of out of they're poking their heads out of their normal elements to to cause trouble. And that would be another way to introduce the Drow and drag your characters kicking and screaming into the Underdark. Where they don't expect it to. Like, if they know there are Drow in the world, they're like, we're never going to the Underdark ever. This forest can't hurt us. There's no Drow here. Surprise. But, yeah.
Michael, I've never used the Machine of Lum the Mad.
Well, that was in Baldur's Gate 2.
All right, I'm going to have to ditch out, guys. But
it was.
Great episode and great test.
Cheers. Thank you.
Later, folks.
Thank you.
All right, see you around, FB.
Yeah. I remember seeing it in Baldur's Gate 2, but I've never used it in a tabletop game because it's not my sort of thing. It's a bit too technological. So I tend to avoid technology. I try and keep things separate, and I try and keep technology down to an absolute minimum. And one thing players I have seen in quite a few discussion groups where players are trying to recreate quite modern devices using magic.
It's epidemic in 5th Ed, yeah.
Yeah, I don't allow that. I don't allow that because I like to keep my games very medieval. And if it's not been invented, the character won't know about it. Won't know about the concepts that are involved.
I get that a lot with players. You know, they'll as you say, they'll try to infuse modern concepts. Oh, well, it's easy. Science says they can do this. Yes, but your character doesn't know that. No. What did they know in medieval times? But magic. Well, no. So, but I suppose if you are playing a more technological game, technology can be seen as magic, and I'm guessing that's the sort of approach they have with places like Eberron, for example, which has that sort of. But that's the setting. That's setting specific. It's not just a general medieval fantasy or swords and sorcery, which is even more ancient.
Yes, but of course, in Greyhawk, they did drop Expedition to the Barrier Peaks and Blackmoor, put those sort of places.
But again, Barrier Peaks is an outlier because it's a crashed spaceship. It's not something that's indigenous to the world that somebody figured out.
Wasn't there a bit of technology in the Blackmoor setting though?
Possibly.
And they bolted Blackmoor onto Greyhawk. Pretty sure of it.
It's possible. I don't know offhand, but
anyhow. Right. Anything more on the topic you want to bring up?
No, I got nothing. I got nothing. When you mentioned the topic, I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess I'll sit and listen and see what comes up."
Yeah, they've deserted us.
The more organized ones deserted us. Yeah.
Yes. We are the ramblers. we are the ones who react to what other people, the ideas that other people bring in. So, go on, chat. anything you want to ask us, pair of old fuddy-duddies who are ill-prepared for this topic? We'll discuss your topic.
With me, it just comes up so rarely. Like I play by the book. I'll come up with something occasionally, but for the most part, it's like I got the books in front of me. I'm a lazy DM. I need quick prep. And sitting around and balancing and designing a magic item. I guess the one item I created for my current game that's come up is although it hasn't been mentioned in the Night Below recaps because it didn't come up there, but Bob had a magical key, which was a set of 12, and I created that. And so I created the item. The magic key has properties that they have not unlocked. And when they have the set of 12 will point to a vault where the wizard who created it stored his artifacts. So they don't know this yet, but that's a big adventure hook. So there, I created that for my game.
I can say, in the OSE game, it'll be a blend of by the book items and things I make, because I do like tinkering, I do like making, and I do like stealing ideas from places.
It's not fast. Yes. It's homage.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. And all the best DMs beg, borrow, and steal from wherever they can, and then claim it for their own. Undead and essentially magic items for necromancers. Well, yeah.
Well, they can be dispelled, so yeah, why not?
Yeah, of course they are.
Dispel magic, and it wipes out a skeleton or zombie. So,
yeah.
It's an example of a quest you have done for players to make them cool, or to make something cool. If so, what was the item?
Ooh. I've had ideas for quests, but very rarely do they ever come to fruition. So I'm afraid I'm a bit rubbish answering that one, Michael. In my recent game, I gave them a few recipes for potions and things like that, but in terms of making items, my characters rarely got to that sort of level. In fact, there's only one campaign I've run in the era that I really remember, where the players got to that level and they just weren't interested in making their own stuff and making their own spells. They were just going with the flow, which was a little bit of a shame.
Yeah, my guys haven't even gotten that high yet, so they keep dying.
Yeah,
I wonder if I'm too hard on them.
I did keep telling the two mages, you are at the level now where you can brew potions and scribe scrolls. They never bothered, which was really silly.
Silly, especially the scrolls. I mean, what you want to do is, when you have a lot of downtime and money as a wizard, is create a bunch of scrolls. Those are extra spells for you on your adventure.
Yeah. Use those for the. Excuse me, I've got a sneeze coming. Excuse me. There we go. It sits there, and you're like, oh,
you've got the amulet of sneezing that never comes.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's a great way of having loads of utility spells kept.
Yeah, identify being the big one. You precast identify into a scroll, and you suffer all of the effects before the adventure, and then you've just got an instant identification ready to go.
Yes. So Hyrax has asked, magic items identify versus trial and error versus legend, lore, and sages.
All of the above.
All of them, yes, all of them. Yeah. I love my players to trial and error with items and just simply find out what's going on. It might have a command word inscribed on it that might do something, but there might be hidden things in there that certain things can happen with, and certain enemies might set it off or whatever. They're there. Those things are there to be found through a combination of luck and whatever. Sages, again, that group that got to the level where they got the money for that sort of stuff just weren't interested. They just weren't interested.
Yeah, my group, they find magic items. They're paranoid. They identify it, they put it away, and they just wait until they get back to town and can identify it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but that's what they generally did. They drop a detect magic on it, work out it's magical, and then between adventures they would start trying to work out what it did. That's most common. Or if it was a weapon of some or a piece of armor, they would try it out.
Yeah, they also got smart, started casting auguries to make sure nothing was dangerous if they used it right away. It's like, good, use your resources.
Yes, yeah, and that's what divination spells are for. I mean, augury, it basically tells you if the current course of action is dangerous.
Yeah, weal or woe.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect use of the spell. Commune is another good spell for that.
Mm-hmm. Until your god said, "Stop bothering me. Just try it out."
Yes. Personal investment into items. Well, yeah. I mean, I have. It does remind me of one item I did put in. There was an item that had got an essence of the mage that created it that was long dead, and that mage was quite irritating, and would keep talking to that keep talking telepathically to that character and interrupting him at annoying times. So yes, it was a headband that he put on that contained the will of the mage that created it. It gave the character a nice little boost, but there was something in his head from then on. All right. XP costs. That's in 3rd edition, isn't it? But they had the
that's
XP
a 3rd
cost
edition thing.
Yeah. I'm not a 3rd edition player and Nor's mage.
I played for a bit. I never ran it, never would, but
No.
I played for a
Same.
bit and just got sick of it. I was like, this is not for me. I'm out.
Locations as items. Enchanted strongholds, intelligent buildings. I wrote an adventure which had got an enchanted glade in it, which was on a demi-plane, which was simply a place to rest. That's basically what it was. I got that idea essentially from Castle Amber, where if you choose to rest, you can rest pretty much at will. But they were limited as to when they could go into this demi-plane. They had to be pretty much invited. So that was it was a enchanted glade which had fresh food and water and all that sort of stuff. So they could always stock up, because in that adventure they were basically outcasts from a town. They couldn't go back to the nearest town, and they couldn't escape without defeating the demon that was harassing the town that thrown them out.
Slan is mentioning your enchanted source of water.
Yes, of course. There is an enchanted source of water in that adventure, and I may have other ideas for possible effects for that water things you might be able to do with it. I mean, yes, you get 1 hit point temporarily while you're wet, and it can be used to restore dried out potions. You've discovered both of those.
Well, the thing about enchanted areas is that they'll turn up all the time. Like, so many modules and so many scenarios have them, but how many players have you had that want to build that? Want to build something where they've got a magic fountain? Yeah.
Never. No. I'm afraid that's never come up in any of my games, because they so rarely get to the levels where they can create those sort of things.
I had a druid once in the 2nd ed game. I made a grove, but it was a grove. It wasn't like it didn't have an enchanted effect or anything. It was the grove for religious purposes. That's the closest I've ever come.
Yeah. I'd like to get players to nurture and cherish characters those sort of levels, and then start thinking about that sort of thing. But it happens so rarely in games when you play very fairly, because it takes so long, and so many characters die before they get there.
Well, that's the thing, and it also depends on how fast you level your characters. Like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm not stingy per se, but I play a moderate game. Our current team good, they're the highest. They have a 6th level thief, a 6th level cleric, and it's taken those players about 2 years to get to those levels.
Yeah, and that's if you play sort of 3 or 4 hour sessions every other week. That's how long it will take.
Bi-weekly, around 4 hours on average. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the game I was running my group through, it was all using official modules because they'd not experienced any of them. So I wanted to experience the nostalgia of running them. I wanted to run them all for an adult group, and we played pretty much from about 7:30 till about midnight every Friday for the best part of 3 years. And they had multiple characters, so they were switching between groups so that I could use all the modules. For example, one campaign started with the village of with Eye of the Serpent, then went to Village of Homlet, and then to the Sentinel and the Gauntlet. Whereas another campaign had Against the Cult of the Reptile God as a starter, and things like that. So I could use all the modules because obviously they'll fly through certain levels.
Right.
And
modules are also high yield. Like if you get all those treasures in a module and survive it, you will level. You will fly up.
It still took them all that time to get to the highest level character was a level 12 thief, and there was a lot of deaths. Most of the characters had lost at least 5 points of constitution due to resurrection spells, raised deads. Sorry.
Right.
And that was really common. I mean, most of the fighters no longer had constitution bonuses. So it was becoming harder and harder and harder to survive, as the dwarven fighter now had about 40 maximum hit points instead of about 60.
Right.
But yeah, and that sort of thing happens. It is a bit of a spiral. But yeah, they got some really good items from those adventures because they are quite heavy with them, as you say. They're quite heavy with treasure. They're quite heavy with the reward. It is a risk and reward thing. A lot of the modules are difficult, but certainly if they go through the Lost Caverns of Sojcan, they're going to come out with some amazing loot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of modules like that. I'm thinking, what was the other one? Tomochan is not. Tomochan has a very low yield. Very
low yield. Yes. Tharisdun has some good loot in it. Low yield ones. Most of the Desert of Desolation's a little bit low yield when it comes, especially when it comes to monetary value. Dwellers of the Forbidden Cities, high yield. That's because it's a sandbox. There's loads of places to go. And for low-level adventures, Village of Homlet, extremely high yield. Extremely. But you've got to, you risk quite a lot of characters to do it.
Well, as you know, I'm recounting the old school Essentials game, Keep on the Borderlands. Yeah. And all told, I've only recapped 14, but all told, we've had 21 sessions. And that's over the course of the year. I started this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to see that. Now, of course, the highest character is only 4th level.
Yeah.
That's a year of, I guess 20 sessions. So effectively bi-weekly, just slightly less than bi-weekly.
So that's about a level every 5 sessions. That's actually a decent rate. That's not particularly slow.
No, it's not too bad. I mean, there've been a lot of deaths, but the current highest level character, the cleric, that's his second character. So he's the only one who hasn't died multiple times because he got it real fast. Oh, we got to play smart. It's easy to die.
Yeah. Wait, so in my OSC game, I think one of the thieves might be within about 200 or 300 XP of gaining a level.
Yeah, thieves, especially because they go up fast. But I was able to say, tied into the magic items, I mean, and the treasure, Keep on the Borderlands has a lot of good stuff you can find.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've been peppering around other modules and other scenarios. So it's interesting watching, and you can see where that comes into play. I've lost my thought now. I just had a total brain fart. I had a point.
The Lost City is another one with really high, it's high risk, high yield. You're going to lose a lot of characters to get all that loot out of there, but there's plenty of loot in there.
Yeah, and I think, and that's it. That's an important consideration when we're playing the games, is what is the reward versus the risk ratio.
Yeah.
I still can't remember what my point was going to be.
I say they're talking about war-based items in chat. I've never had anyone use. I wanted to end that campaign with Bloodstone Pass, which is about a level 15 adventure, which uses battle system. And I certainly would have considered putting in things that will have battlefield effects in that, but G3 killed them, so we never got that far. Never got this far, sadly. I've still never run Bloodstone Pass, and I'd love to. It's not a perfect adventure, but I like the idea of going from settlement to settlement, trying to raise an army. I think it's a good idea for an adventure.
Hyrax is mentioning B4. It's one of the B modules I have not yet run, if you can believe that. I think I've run all the others. Let me see. I've done 1, 2, definitely 3. Which one is 5? 5 is Horror on the Hill, right? Or is it Journey of the Rock? Horror on the Hill, I've definitely run that. 6 is Veiled Society. I've run that. Yeah. Or Rahasia is 7. 8 is, which one is 8? That one's Journey of the Rock. And then 9, your favorite, Castle Caldwell. Yeah, I've run all of them 1 to 9 except for B4. I've never run it. I own it, but I've never run it.
So the only one you haven't run is the best one.
Possibly, yeah. Well, I'm seeding it. It's gonna make its appearance in OSE because canonically they are close to Yalarum, which is where it's set. But we'll see if they bite. It's ultimately their choice, right?
Yeah, I mean, magical masks. There's a bit of a wasted opportunity there. They could have had magical masks in there, but there's already enough stuff in there. But make some of the masks magical with interesting effects. That would be good.
Oh, I haven't run 10. That's Night Dark Terror, and 12 Queen's Harvest, but I have run the King's Festival. So only 3.
I haven't run B10 either, and that's I've read it, and that's one of the best ones. But it is it's a big undertaking. And the issue with B10 is it starts at level 2. You can't start with level 1 characters in it. It's too hard.
Right.
But it is a glorious adventure. It is really, there's tons to it. Absolutely tons to it.
It's given the format of my OSE group, so I don't know if I could run something like B10 because I think it's more campaign and story driven.
It is, yeah. It is.
And I can never guarantee who's going to show up to the table. It's such a rotation. So I need a setting like the Keep where such a rotation is not a problem. Whereas if somebody commits to it.
The Lost City would work because once they've established a base in the upper tiers of the pyramid, they can then go into. You can play it very sandboxy, go off in little forays.
Right, just justify how people are coming and going.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, treasure table random rolls or decide. Do you random roll everything or do you decide?
I generally roll randomly. The exception if it's core to a scenario, right?
Right.
But yeah, no, I like to randomize as much of my game as possible. Because my philosophy of play is I want to see what's happening. I don't want to or minimize my influence on where things are going. Sometimes it's going to happen. It's just the nature of the beast. But by leaving everything random, the encounters, the treasures and all that, it makes it more interesting to me.
In terms of loot, I will randomly roll the value. So I'll randomly roll to get a value total, but then I'll scatter it between coin types because I don't think it's remotely realistic. For example, you roll 5,000 silver pieces and nothing else, it's not going to be 5,000 silver pieces. Because 5,000 silver pieces is 500 gold pieces value. So you might have a gem worth 100 gold pieces, 100 gold pieces, a few platinum pieces, and quite a lot of silver and copper to make up that.
I agree. I'll mix and match. I'll roll to see. And other things that are of value. Okay, so you've got 5,000 silver pieces, so maybe a fifth of that is in coinage. Maybe so maybe there's a cask of fine whiskey that's worth 2,000 silver, or a hutch, a beautifully well carved, well-made hutch. That's worth money. Let's get it onto the cart. Things like that. I'll divide that, but I'll roll the values, as you say, and magic items. I will let magic items stand, even if it's overpowered. It's like, you know what? That's what the dice said. Let's see what the players do with it.
My approach tends to be, though, when it comes to magic items, that I will add a few bits and bobs that I want to put in, and then I'll roll randomly, but they won't necessarily be in the specific treasure place. I might put it somewhere else in the level. So, for example, those potions that you found in the OSE game,
right?
I randomly rolled some potions. But I wasn't going to put them in the goblin lair, because there's already some stuff there. So I thought, well, what else can I do with them? How else can I get them into this level? So I put them in another room where they would fit.
Well, that makes sense too. Goblins, they're not stupid. They're like, well, let's not put all of our eggs in one basket. Let's spread it around into hiding nook and hide them in nooks where if something happens, we can.
I put my in a place where the goblins don't even go. They were just going to be on that level. They're just part of that level's treasure.
Oh, I get what you're saying. I was thinking, the goblins would spread it out and hide it in different nooks.
No, not necessarily. No. As far the way I see it is that those treasure types they'll pretty much define the overall loot of the dungeon level, and it doesn't necessarily belong to those creatures. I like to dot things about and put them behind puzzles, or just sort of little things that you've got to overcome to get the treasure, like the sack of loot that was in the skeletons room. Skeletons don't normally have treasure, but that was just pulled away from another section and just dropped in there, because I thought that would be a little puzzle to solve, and there's your reward. Anyhow, a ring of daredevils reduces difficulty of maneuver, but it makes you blind. Okay, fair enough.
And it gives you echolocation.
Yeah, but I mean, I like the idea of importing stuff from MERP, because I like MERP's approach of having items that allow you to use spell-like effects, and there's a lot of flexibility in that, and there's a lot of specificity and a lot of flavor in a lot of those items. So I agree with Hyrax on that. I've agreed with a lot that Hyrax has said tonight. Thank you for joining chat, Hyrax. You've been a worthwhile addition to chat tonight. You've given us plenty
face keeping us on our toes.
Absolutely. Is it Slan? Is it Yanu? I think Gingerbeard's character is quite close as well, but again, he's another thief. But
I'm probably going to duck out in a few minutes. Bear is doing his 4-color cafe, and he's invited me on. I haven't been on his show yet. Yeah,
well, I say. So you're joining other channels.
Indeed, it's not just you and Hungar. Now I've got a third one in my repertoire.
all this procrastination you're doing.
Yeah. Well, hey, I posted a video this morning, so
yeah, you did. You did.
I got 2 weeks left on my Final Cut Pro trial. So now that I've gotten used to it, it's like, I gotta buy it.
But is it making life easier?
It's making life more variable. It was a slightly steeper learning curve than iMovie. iMovie is dead simple and free, but there are more features in Final Cut Pro, and once I master them, I think the videos will become really smooth.
Right.
And I can add gimmicks and tricks. I'm already using the basic ones, like basic transitions. I don't know if you saw today's video. The werewolf transformation seemed more smooth, or the werebear. You can see almost the lines blurred together, right? So it looks so much better than just a dissolve. Little details like that, which I think add to the overall effect.
I mean, I know the one I use has got plenty more a lot more power than I will ever consider using. It's just that I don't have the patience, the tolerance to play around with it.
Yeah.
I tend to record a video and then put all the pictures in and go, right, I'm done. And I know it's got all transition effects and all sorts in there. I just don't know how to use them, and I'm not the most patient when it comes to learning new stuff. So I've got it at a level where it's working for me.
Well, if I wanted to keep making videos, I had to learn it. I started when I started the channel, it was all my phone. Then I moved on. Oh, I can juggle between my phone and my tablet. And then I got the computer. It's like, oh, I can do iMovie on the computer, and it was an improvement. And then somebody suggested to me, you should do Final Cut. I'm like, oh, it's another one to learn. All right, let's take a look.
I mean, people have give me all manner of suggestions, and I bought Debut, which allowed me to record my screen with me on the corner of the screen, but it's power hungry. I need to find a way of transferring that license across my other machine I've got now, which I still haven't got. They still haven't sent me the motherboard for it. I sent them a very demanding email today, basically saying there will be a PayPal case raised if I haven't received it by this weekend.
Right.
I think it's been a month.
Yeah.
I ordered it a month ago. It arrived pretty quickly, but it's been 3 weeks of fobbing off now. So, and each message I get will say, "Oh, I'm checking them. I'll send them out. I'll be checking them tomorrow. I'll send them out next week or whatever." And I'm like, "Look, if I don't receive it by Saturday, then there's gonna be a
file a complaint."
Yeah,
there is. That's ridiculous.
And to be honest, a lot of the parts in there are good. It's just that just one RAM slot on the motherboard doesn't work. And I should have a fully working motherboard. it's... Hello, Wayne. I think we are going to be wrapping up very shortly because Saxius and Elfbait have both already had to go. And what time is Bear streaming tonight?
He's starting at 7, so I need to just sort of pop off. I need to get a quick bite to eat, reboot the computer because streaming tends to drain the RAM. I notice everything gets really sluggish after a stream. So
is it 5 hours or 6 hours difference to me?
5, so it'll be midnight for you.
Midnight. Okay, so we could jump straight from my stream pretty much into that one. But obviously, you need 20 minutes to get off and get sorted. Yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I might jump. I'll try and watch the first half hour before I get to bed, I think.
He did. I gave him the link to your Discord, so he joined in. So he was hoping to get you on some point. I told him midnight was a little late for you, but
yes, yeah, he has. He says he's going to offer try and get something going on the weekend, if at all possible. My weekends are very, very busy, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm going to be at my mother's birthday this weekend, so I don't know if I can do the OSE game Saturday. Depends on whether I'm back.
Right.
But I'm starting to enjoy that. I'm enjoying a good old half-orc fighter there.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to run the first session yet. I mean, I might end up running it, but if Gene or Gingerbeard wants to run the first session and leave me with the second one, that's absolutely fine. However we do it, and if there's anyone in chat who wants to play some OSE this Saturday, we're playing OSE in the Discord this Saturday. Join the Discord, click interested, and come along and play some OSE with us because it's a lot of fun. Yes. All right, so you better bugger off, haven't you?
I guess so. It's 20 minutes too. So yeah, all right. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Cheers, mate. Cheers. So it's just little old me. Just little old me. Yes, no, sorry. And there is a session this Saturday. There's 2 sessions scheduled this Saturday, and Jane, if you can run the afternoon one, then that would be absolutely wonderful. So I can have I can play my paladin, and I can stand there and be shiny, and with my 4 hit points and my 4 constitution. Rah! He's so hard. Everyone's gone. Omanal, you're late. We've had Saxius here, we've had Elfbait here, and Mage has just gone because Saxius has got to go to bed, and Elfbait has got work meetings, and Mage is on another stream in a bit. So it's just me for the end, just me wobbling on by myself. We've covered the topic. We've spent about a good 2 hours talking about magic, how we make magic items, what we let players do with them, curses and spells and all sorts. So all the good stuff. Can you bring a thief illusionist? It's OSE. I've said no to multi-class characters, but I have to ask Gene if he's running it in the afternoon. I mean, if he wants to let you run a thief illusionist, then absolutely. You've got to roll your stats. You've got to roll 3 characters, and you choose which one you want to play, and it's all 3d6 in line, 3d6 in order. I've got a paladin with a 4 constitution. That's what I'm playing at the moment. So you win some, you lose some. You take what you get. But all the stuff's in the Discord, and if anyone's got the Discord link, feel free to drop it into chat. I haven't got Discord open at the moment, so let's see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find the Discord link. I'll drop it in. I have to open up another YouTube window to do this because I paste it in from a YouTube template into my other videos. Come on. 13 people watching me by myself fumble through YouTube Creator Studio to get my copy of my Discord link. Wow. Just bear with me. Just bear with me a moment. Did I put it in that module review? I almost certainly did. Here we go. Here we go. If you want to join the Discord, there's the link. There you go. I know you've been traveling around a lot, haven't you, recently, Omanal? A Tony. My paladin hasn't got that level of strength. He hasn't. It's not AD&D. It's Old School Essentials, which has the only minimum for a paladin is in Old School Essentials is a charisma of at least 9. It's quite easy on the limitations because it is just 3d6 down the line. So he just had to have a 9 charisma. Apart from that, that was it. Some of the demi-human races, you have to have 9 constitution or 9 dexterity or whatever to be able to qualify. But that's my paladin's. He's not particularly stupid, but he's big and strong. He just gets very wheezy when he walks more than 100 yards. So he survived the first session, which is good. Right, so you're converting things that you pre-wrote for AD&D, Gene. That's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. It's what I should be doing. I'm writing all new stuff. My own stupid fault. I ought to be adapting from places, but I'm not. I'm trying to write it all from scratch. But that reminds me, I do have to do some work on it. Probably Saturday morning, because you've pretty much done everything I've written so far. No, sorry, and it's removed. But when the game is based on BX or BECB, it's removed. And the core of Old School Essentials is BX, Moldvay BX. Though they have bolted on a few bits and pieces from AD&D. And for example, the multiclassing, that's one thing they bolted on and having, for example, dwarf fighter, dwarf thief, being able to do that, that's bolted into it as well. So it's like a hybrid. It's a very simple hybrid. If you just assume, Wayne, that it's, let's say, BX with that's not specifically race as class, it's got most of the class rules from AD&D, then there you go, you're fine with that. And if you need any help, I'm on Discord when I'm at work. I just pop the internet Discord link on my work computer, and I pop in from time to time. So that's I can always help you out with that. But yes, 3d6 straight down the line for OSE. We've got some characters with 18s in stats, fairly rolled in Discord. DK's Paladin has 18 charisma, and I believe Brian has got a mage with 18 intelligence and no other good stats whatsoever. Yes, multiclassing is an optional rule. It's one that I've not allowed in my particular section, but the way we're doing it is I'm doing a wintry themed area. Gingerbeard's picked the autumn theme area, and I believe Jean's was more of a summer one. So there's room for one more DM to do spring. All parts of the same world, but with just different climate, different feel, because it's all based around Christmas. Mine is. They worship St. Nicholas. They found little magic items called fire baubles. They had to put a cookie in the hand of a statue of St. Nicholas to gain entrance to somewhere. Little things like that. Bit of fun. Just a bit of fun. Nothing too highbrow. Oh, we had to solve a puzzle that was based on Elf on a Shelf as well. That took a while. That took a while to get the answers. But let me have a look, see what other any other question. So yeah, if anyone wants to join in, you're more than welcome. That goes for any of the games on the Discord. Because Saxius has had to stop his Thursday game for the foreseeable because of work changes. I'm now running Call of Cthulhu on a Thursday night, which will be Thursday afternoon for a lot of people. But there's certainly room for people to pop in there as well. I've been told that my style of running Call of Cthulhu is quite good fun, so you're welcome to join in. Thank you, Eminel. Thank you, Eminel. I'll tell you what happened in the first session of Call of Cthulhu. It was the beginning of the Horror on the Orient Express side campaign, the Blood Red Fez, and it started with four PCs, all having received a letter from a friend. The PCs some of them were aware of each other, but they weren't friends as such. And I said to them that they all had to create a character that had a link with this NPC. And General Nutt decided his character would be an ambassador from a far-off land. And he's playing the part of a pygmy who speaks the Xhosa language. And his weapon he carries around is a blowgun. And I've said, yes, you can have little poisonous darts. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But so they're quite a disparate lot. But they all went to this boarding house, a little old lady, very sort of old school Victorian London, little old lady, seen it all happen. She's a widow, and some Turkish gentlemen rented out a room in her house and brought a young gentleman in, which they locked him in a room, and he'd started making weird noises in the night, and they were visiting him occasionally, but she was not allowed to go in the room, and they kept the door locked. and the party went in there. There was a police doctor in there because she'd called the police because of the noises he was making. And he was all withered away, and he was a young guy when he was brought 4 days ago, and now he looked about 70. And Professor Smith, the NPC that got all the party together, believed he knows his identity, and that he's a former pupil of his who's been working with a mate of his in Turkey recently. And they investigate. He's wearing this fez, and they investigate the fez, realize it's quite disgusting. It's colored a rancid blood color. It stinks, and it makes these funny murmuring noises that get into your head and cause you to get a bit disturbed. And while they're there, the guy dies. And of course, the police doctor starts trying to examine him, at which point all the lights went out in the room, and there was screeching and screaming, and one of them got a lamp lit to find that the guy on the bed had arisen as some sort of zombie creature and was eating the face off the police doctor. We then had a bit of a combat ensue. The zombie, one of the player characters tried to get a lamp lit and wanted to try and burn the zombie creature with his own bedclothes, and rolled really well to grab the bedclothes and plunged him into the lamp that they'd lit to try and light the bedclothes. And the next one to move was the zombie creature, and I rolled 100 for the zombie's attack, which is a critical failure in Call of Cthulhu. So I ruled that as the zombie was lurching across the room towards him, he was still pulling the bedclothes, and he pulled the bedclothes and took the zombie's feet from underneath him, and he went crashing to the ground. And then another player character unloaded his pistol into the zombie. This character had about a 20% pistol skill and rolled 0-1, which is a critical hit. Which meant the zombie's role in that fight was to kill the police doctor, lurch towards the player characters, fall flat on its face, and then get shot in the head. And that was it. That's the way the dice go sometimes. It's the way the dice go. Anyway, so what are you all chatting about in chat while I've gone on about that? Wrong time zones to play Call of Cthulhu during the weekdays. Yeah, okay. If we get into the position where there's only one DM running OSE, I would happily run a Cthulhu game at the weekend. It all depends how we end up working at the OSE game. At the moment, the idea is that the OSE game is a drop-in game that pretty much lasts all Saturday, and people can pop in and pop out, multiple DMs. But if we get to the position where there's just one or two people running it in rotating sessions, then I might set aside a slot for some Call of Cthulhu on a Saturday. At the moment, I can't squeeze it in, unfortunately, and I can't play Sundays. What Advanced Marvel Superheroes AD&D merge system? What are you on about here? What are you on about? Look, 5th edition is D&D superheroes. I played Marvel superheroes and I play AD&D, but I don't mix the two. PCs against Doctor Strange and Greyhawk. Okay, so you like the weird and wonderful. And hopefully, Omanal, you'll be able to join us at some point in the near future when you've stopped your travels, which I know you're on with work at the moment. So as soon as you're back in the land of the regular working hours, then by all means, drop in, join us. You want the name of Wayne's dealer? Well, Wayne's already told us that he likes to chill out with a certain something. Yeah, the only Marvel stuff series I ever really got into was the Secret Wars, because I was about 13, 14, 15 when they were being published, and I bought all the Secret Wars comics. I haven't got them anymore, unfortunately, which is a shame, because I had the full set. I know it's legal where you are. It's not legal here. So I have to disavow because it's illegal here. But no, Secret Wars is the only Marvel series I really got into. But I've got the Marvel Superheroes role playing game. I've got the yellow box and the advanced rule books as well, and about 10 of the adventures. I picked them all up for about £25 on eBay in a big job lot, and they're mostly in decent condition. Yeah, I know you're in Canada. You're in Canada. Yeah, and Wayne, I've tried those as well. My local golf course, the 17th fairway, used to sprout them at a certain time of year. And no, never harvested them. No, never. Anyhow. So I've also one time I ran two times I ran Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, the ring of mushrooms that's in one of the rooms. I ignored the adventure and I made them magic mushrooms, so it caused interesting things. And one group decided to put them in the wine caskets in the basement, in the cellar, which of course had interesting effects when the smugglers came to enjoy their wine or ale, whatever it was. Very clever, very clever. Door-to-door delivery. So capitalism has come straight in, taking advantage of it. But no, in one of the games, one of my players decided to eat those mushrooms, and I had his character have some interesting visions. That's the argument for here, in that it would make it all a lot less shady. And I can see that as a good argument for legalization. I think there would have to be some restrictions, but I think common sense should prevail, in my opinion. Of course, our laws on alcohol are a lot more lax than most of North America. For example, my son, he's 16. If we're having a meal in the pub, he can have a pint with his meal because he's with us. That's perfectly legal. Drinking age is 18 everywhere in Britain. And we can legally give alcohol in the home to kids from about the age of 5. So there you go. I don't particularly want to drink reindeer wee. No. Right, anyway, I think I've probably exhausted everything for tonight. As always, I've got to be up for work on a Thursday morning. I thank you all for staying with me for the last 20 minutes while I've been by myself, talking about ways to get other forms of inspiration. The best way to describe it. Of course, all the great authors from the Victorian age were on opium. Most of them, anyway. But yeah, cheers all. Thank you all for joining in. It's been a good old chat tonight. We did stay on topic for most of the 2 hours talking about magic. So if you want to go back, if you're late in and want to go back and listen to that, we had some good talking about curses and stuff. Of course, Saxius was the one for curses, yes. But yeah, I will see a lot of you on Friday. Where's my book again? I'm too short. There we go. That's what I'm going to be reading on Friday on the stream. Dracula, Curse of the Vampire big old book, could last a number of streams. It is a choose your own adventure with dice, very much like Fighting Fantasy. Slightly different system, but very similar. So that's for Friday. And if you want to, let's look at the art. Let's look at the art. Look at that. Focus. Proper, really good, spooky, old school art. Let's see if I can find some good art from the book. Just a random page. Oh, it's a rabid dog. I assume it's a rabid dog. It's certainly ghostly. It's got no. Its eyes look a bit spooky, but I think this looks rather nice. So we will be playing that on Friday. Yeah, marvelous. Anyway, until then, I'm going to depart. The pumpkin hour has arrived. Thank you all for being in chat, and I just want to thank Saxius, Elfbait, and Mage's Musings for joining me in the chat tonight. If you're not subscribed to the two of them that have channels, then by all means go and subscribe. And Mage's Musings is now going to be on Bear's stream, so if you want to keep listening to nerds talking about nerdy things, pop across to that and have a listen. Cheers all for now. I'll see you all on Friday and Saturday for some OSE as well.